In 2011, Tom Cruise embraced the IMAX era by dangling off the tallest building in the world, though I'm not sure he even cared if the cameras were rolling. Luckily, Brad Bird was directing this one and made sure to capture it all. Join us as we discuss Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter. That is David.
Next time, I get to seduce the rich guy.
This is a movie podcast. We are working through the Mission Impossible franchise, and this is week 4, meaning that we're doing the 4th movie, which is Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol. And this is where they drop the numbers, so it's very easy to not necessarily remember the order of the names at this point. So it's,
Yes.
before I felt stupid saying it's week 3, so we're doing Mission Impossible 3, but now it actually makes sense to actually tell you what the 4th one is. So yes, welcome to the show. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into the spoilers. And of course, if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. And of course, I can tell you at the end of the show about all the bonus stuff you can get and support everything over at Patreon. But that'll come later. So yes, Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol was the 4th entry that came out in 2011. I was going to university at the time. I remember the billboards everywhere when I was on my way to uni for what felt like months. And this was the first one that got like an IMAX release, because that kind of become a normal thing by then for big movies to get the IMAX release and have certain scenes shot in IMAX cameras. So that was kind of where this was going. Brad Bird is the director, who's kind of a weird pick because like he was mainly known for the Iron Giant from before this. So
yeah, he also did Incredibles over at Pixar, so he could do a solid like action movie.
Yeah, but also animated. So still an interesting choice, right? I'm not saying that those skills can transfer. In fact, case in point, they clearly did. But but they don't necessarily translate. So it's quite interesting that he made that jump. So yeah, Brad Bird's directing. Obviously, Tom Cruise is here as Ethan Hunt, and there's a bunch of other cast members we'll get to in a little bit. But I mean, I feel like weird given the premise of these movies because they all sound kind of similar, and it doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of like what either makes the movie work or doesn't. But there's a bad guy who's got nuclear launch codes. He wants to launch nukes. The team has to try and stop him. There you go. End of premise.
Yeah, it's like giving the premise to a cooking show. Like, you know what you're doing here. You know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you hadn't seen this before?
No.
Like the rest of them. So, I always ask you first anyway, but still, it's a bit more interesting when you've not seen it. So, David, what did you think of Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol?
So last movie, Mission Impossible 3, you were a little bit more negative on, but I thought that felt like they finally found a groove. They finally found, here's what Mission Impossible is going to be. And it was not, completely down that trail, but at least starting down that path. This one is exactly what I think of when I think of Mission Impossible. This is exactly what like all the later movies are of, again, like you said, there's a guy with a nuke and they got to stop and save the world and do the whole hoo-ha thing like that. It feels like we've finally gotten it figured out. The team dynamics, which has always been something that these movies have struggled with, have finally been completely sorted. I feel like everyone had a reason to be on the team and they were fully fleshed out and they actually mattered to the story. And then on top of it, I think that the action and the stunt stuff is top notch here. I think they did a great job of keeping suspense and everything going on. So overall, really did enjoy it. If I had any little minor critique, I think that some of the plot as it's explained in the movie is a little bit needlessly complicated. Like they're throwing out a bunch of names and a bunch of affiliations, and it all kind of just flies over the head when in reality it is pretty much as simple as you described it. It's just they need those more complex things in order to set up the next couple scenes coming down the pipeline.
I mean, if anything, that's just the holdover of the same problem all of them have had, is like we have to make this sound really complicated, but it's actually pretty straightforward if you just explained it that way. I do think it's less egregious here, or maybe it's not so much that they fixed that problem, but what the problem they did fix is that they take like much less time to go from like set piece or heist to next heist or set piece. Like, the time between the very sort of simple setup ideas where you get to enjoy the action and the thrills and all the rest of it is much cut down in this, where it feels like the pacing, I think, is. I mean, I think this is the best one of the series. I think it's the best one so far, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons for that, not the only reason, but one of them is the pacing is like, they've nailed the pacing here in a way that I don't think any of the three previous films had nailed. Which is, it feels like a little bit of fun, and then you get like just a tiny bit in between to set the next thing up. But even though the plot's not amazing, and none of them have got amazing plots, it's really just the excuse for the next bit, like the next set piece, the next heist, the next action, whatever. That's what makes this work. That plus the fact that, like you were saying, the team dynamic is finally there. It feels like they all have character, they all have different motivations, they all have something going on that's specific to them as a character outside of what their role in the team is. So, they all have something to do, which is great. In the last movie, they kind of mostly had something to do. Although here, I think that was improved as well, because it felt like in each mission they had something to do. And even right up until the very end, when they could have ignored them and just focused on Ethan, like a lot of the movies have done by the time you get to the end, this one didn't quite do that. It kind of felt like, no, everyone's kind of equal. Yeah, Tom Cruise is always the star. Like, no one's mistaking that. But it does feel more like they've got stuff to do. It feels like they've got their own demons to deal with to some extent. And then another thing that I'd kind of forgotten about, but really noticed as I was watching it this time, is that this movie, just the tone, like, it just doesn't take itself too seriously. There's a bit of a sense of humor to the proceedings between the team that make them feel a lot more likable, that makes me a lot more just like, yeah, you know what? I can roll with the sillier plot that's convoluted if you just don't take it like dead serious all the time.
Yeah.
I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, no. Absolutely. I was a little bit concerned at the beginning that Simon Pegg might be a bit too goofy with some of the physical comedy that was going on there, but it kind of mellowed out towards the end. And like you said, the rest of the cast kind of picked up that slack where everyone was not treating it as dead serious. So you had a little bit of playful banter between like Jeremy Renner and Tom Cruise's character that made it feel like a much more lighthearted thing than even number 3 was just before it.
Yeah, and even kind of poking fun at like what they're doing, even though it's still very serious. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that, because all the posters have it, is that at one point Tom Cruise has to scale the side of the tallest building in the world. And the setup for that, which I won't spoil anything specific here, but like the realization that has to happen and the way the characters kind of have to be like, well, it's clearly you, Ethan. I'm at the computer. I can't do it. Like, that is a legitimately funny thing that's kind of poking fun at what they're about to do. So it succeeds on making you laugh, but also setting up, hey, we have to do this crazy thing that you're going to enjoy watching. And for the record, that set piece is filmed impeccably. They knew how to make me feel vertigo the entire time. That was playing out. I remember that being nail-biting when I saw it in theaters back in 2011, and it still works today. Every little slip, every little thing where you realize, oh no, like, he is so high up.
Yeah, no, and then obviously they've been doing the big stunts for a while now, but we've always commented that we don't feel like we've ever actually been Tom Cruise doing it without the assistance of like green screen, or it doesn't feel like it's been the purpose of the movie. This is the first time that I remember when Tom Cruise did the scaling of it. That was like in the news. That was a thing where everyone's like, well, filming Mission Impossible, this is a thing they're doing. Yeah. And it kind of just feels like marketing within its own right.
Yeah, obviously there's some cables and stuff that they've taken out, and there's definitely some tricks at play. They're not just that daft to let them go out and hang off the side of the building, but he's a lot closer to really doing it than actors usually would be when they're doing such a movie scene. And I think that it shows on camera, it looks good, so you can't really fault the spectacle of it. It works. Honestly, if there's any critique that I really have as an action movie, as a fun team heist type movie, is really just that it peaks in the middle, because that building scene is the big middle set piece, and the rest of it's still pretty fun. I enjoy the ending, I enjoy a lot of the things that it does, but it was never ever going to touch that same height again, literal in this case, but So,
I mean, I did enjoy, if you're counting the building set piece and then the thing that happens immediately after it as two separate ones, I actually really enjoyed the thing that followed immediately afterwards. But yeah, the third set piece, like the one that ends the movie, does not get anywhere close to those same pun intended heights.
But I think maybe a testament to like liking the team and the characters in this one more than I've liked any of them is that it almost doesn't matter as much in this one because I'm just enjoying them like doing the mission together, regardless of it not being as exciting as the earlier stuff. Like them just like, bantering and try to like pep each other up or whatever it might be. Just like there's a bit more of a dynamic there where you're just kind of enjoying the team at work. So I think maybe for the first time in the series, it really felt like a series of missions, with the connective tissue in between, of course, but it felt like the missions were the tent poles. They were the main thing we're here for. Which is kind of nice. It didn't get too bogged down in all the like. Can I tell you how pleased I am that there wasn't like a heel turn, that no one was a mole or turned out to secretly be a bad guy the whole time? Oh,
I was waiting for it.
So refreshing, so nice, loved it.
I was absolutely waiting for like, and here's Jeremy Renner pulling off the mask, and there he is. No, it plays it remarkably straight, but I think that there is still just enough to it that keeps you guessing. As straightforward as the plot is, it keeps you guessing how the plot is actually going to go. It keeps on setting up these places where it could pivot off, it could make a certain turn, and sometimes it does. Sometimes there is something you're not expecting happening, but a lot of times it plays it straight, so that way when those turns do happen, they're that much more unexpected.
Yeah. And sometimes they fail, and that's how the movie, goes to the next bit, and the characters feel bad that they failed, and that's also something, if you care a little bit about the team, feeling bad that they feel bad can kind of work, and then that, progresses you forward. So,
There was a bit, I think it was probably right after the Burj Khalifa scene, which is the team just arguing. Like, they're all, whatever it was, it didn't work out, and everyone on the team is, you can tell, self-hating themselves, like upset that it didn't work out, but also angry at each other, and they keep on throwing this blame around. And that was, I think, the first moment where I really sat and realized, I care about all of these team members individually because I'm not siding with any one of them. Like I understand where each of them are coming from, and so I'm able to see their points and why they're upset about these things, rather than it just being like, no, Simon Pegg, you screwed up bad.
And they all kind of, don't get me wrong, Simon Pegg and Paula Patton's character, Jane, they do get introduced kind of together, but they both kind of get their own set piece sequence to kind of like, be their big introduction, right? So Simon Pegg gets to sort of team up with Ethan on a mission, which is a bit comical because it's Simon Pegg that's in it. And then, Paula Patton gets this sort of like flashback story, and those act as kind of their big character like introductions as to what their roles in the team are and what their driving forces are. And then Jeremy Renner comes a little bit later, but again, you take time to establish like his reaction to being thrown into this world with them. So they all like the script's actually quite smart from the perspective of making each of the team members feel like they get a decent introduction that feels meaty into the story, and then those inform like their dynamics with the others and what's eating at them later on and whatnot. So like I think there's just some fundamentals, like, and it doesn't really feel like it's even doing like amazing things with this stuff. It's just that other movies are so bad at it that these fundamentals here just really shine, and like, it just feels nice that they're doing these simple things that make you care about what's going on. So so to look at the cast here, I've kind of mentioned a few of them there, but so obviously Tom Cruise is Ethan Hunt, same old. Jeremy Renner's here as Brandt, who's kind of this other character showing up. I guess there's some stuff that we can't say about him, but like, he shows up as an analyst who's kind of not really meant to be a part of the team, but gets sort of thrown in with them because of circumstances. Simon Pegg is back as Benji, so he doesn't necessarily need as much of an introduction, but he is out on the field now. He's, Yeah,
that's the thing. Last movie, he was absolutely the guy in the chair, never seeing the field, but apparently he passed his field test in between movies, and so he's just out and about in the crew now.
Yeah, I just kind of felt like, we like Simon Pegg's character, we want him around, and we want him around more, so this is why. We have to write a reason, here he is. Paula Patton is here. So, again, a lot of her stuff is kind of spoilerized to say like what makes her specifically different to like the rest of the team.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of her main squad. But there's some other interesting faces that pop up. So Josh Holloway's got a small role, who people might remember as Sawyer from Lost, and I was watching Lost at the time when this came out, or it just finished, I think, at the time when this came out. So he stuck out.
It is worth mentioning that this is a Bad Robot production as well. We did have J.J. Abrams producing, so it makes sense we'd see some Lost alumni here.
That would absolutely be why that ended up with that connection. And what I did not remember, probably because I didn't know who she was at the time, but Lea Seydoux is in this movie.
Yeah.
If you listen to our other podcast, the sci-fi movie podcast, The Atomic Serum Experiment, cheap plug, but it's basically the same as this, but with sci-fi movies. Go check it out. We did a movie called The Beast last year, starring Lea Seydoux. She was also in Crimes of the Future a couple of years ago. If you play video games, she's in the Death Stranding video games. I know her first kind of big success was Blue's the Warmest Color, which I've not seen, but she pops up in a lot of things these days. So it was just interesting.
Actually,
yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about successes in a leading role, I think that's right. But yeah, this was 2 years before Blue's the Warmest Color.
I know this is before, but she was one of the two leads in that, and it was like nominated for a bunch of awards and all these things. This is before she became kind of critically renowned, I guess, to put it that way. So yeah, some interesting faces popping up here or there.
We also have a uncredited appearance from Ving Rhames. He shows up again at one point, and there's a secretary character who I think is supposed to be like Secretary of Defense or something, but regardless, that's Tom Wilkinson.
That's right.
I only recognize from Batman Begins.
Oh, really? Well, I know I've definitely seen him in a couple other things, but yeah, that's the main thing that I would say most people will probably recognize it from. I'd forgotten he was in this as well, because it'd been a while since I'd seen it. But yeah, so yeah, lots of solid faces. The villain Hendrix is played by Michael Nyqvist. So they actually have they thought we're going to have a foreign villain, we're going to get a foreign actor to play him. We're not going to have some American actor doing an accent, and I appreciate that.
On this very show, he was the main Russian bad guy from John Wick, the first one.
You know what? Now that you've said it, I'm thinking about it. I can see it. Okay, very good. And that wasn't that long after. That was only like what, 3 years after this. Yeah.
John Wick was 2014. Yep, 3 years.
Oh, interesting. So well, there you go. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, probably the biggest selling point of the previous one was Philip Seymour Hoffman as the villain. And definitely the villain's not, like, the central focus of this one quite as much, but I think everything else is better, so I don't really have much of a complaint on that front.
Yeah, the villain is much less important than what the plan is. Even when the villain is, like... They have at one point a video clip of the villain basically saying what his plan is, and even then I'm like... You're less interesting than the words that are coming out of your mouth. That's the level I'm at right now.
Yeah, it's the size of the threat that's the problem. He's just kind of a lunatic who believes that nuclear war is not only inevitable but should happen to rebalance society or some bollocks. And that's it. That's the whole character.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that's fine, but that's okay because it's all about setting up like the interesting like set pieces and heists that the characters have to do. That said, though, I do kind of appreciate the way that it kind of escalates in terms of like him and Ethan as like a hero and villain dynamic. Just in a really simple thing, but just the idea that like, oh, they catch a glimpse of each other early, they see each other again after an intense scene, and then there's kind of a showdown towards the end. It's just kind of rule of thirds of like, okay, we're not going to give them this deep personal thing where he's going after his wife like the last movie, but we're going to do this thing with the villain's becoming more aware that Ethan's the thorn in his side and like the problem to his plan. So I just felt like by the time they face off at the end, it's not just this like two people who have never seen each other before fighting. So it's simple, but it's effective.
It's this inevitable collision. Like you see them brush past each other to begin with, and then slowly they just encircle each other until it ends up happening. Yeah,
sure. So yeah, and you know we kind of mentioned the big set piece, which is the building and the hanging off of it. Yeah, excellent. There's some other good stuff though. There's a like a sandstorm sequence. There's you know, the what do you call it, the Kremlin like heist, which is a fun kind of more light-hearted affair, but it's got some fun bits in it. And sometimes they explain what they're going to do beforehand, sometimes they don't, but even when they don't, they do a really good job of like sort of visually showing you what they're doing and kind of like understand the trick or the gimmick of like whatever tech Benji's whipped up to make it work.
Yeah, I think that the rule of thumb is that they don't tell you what they're doing if they want to show off like the ingenuity of it, like again the tech and stuff like that. They tell you what they're doing if it's a cool stunt scene and they really want you to appreciate the stunt without having to worry about how it fits into everything.
Yeah, and one of the things I like as well is that they can't just rely constantly on the tech. Like, it actually fails them at some points, and to the point they want to make face masks at one point and they just can't because the device says nope, we're barking, it's shut down, the printer's jammed.
Every single piece of tech they have fails at some point. There is no piece of tech in here that's completely reliable, and they're like, to the point where at the beginning of the movie the self-destruct function on the message fails.
That's true, yeah.
Like, everything fails in this movie.
Yeah, Tom Cruise has to hit it with his hand to make it go because it doesn't, spark the way it's supposed to. It's just an omen for what's to come. Maybe there's a nice message in there, but not just relying entirely on technology. You need people. People are important.
Yeah,
you know, at the center of everything.
I mean, if that's the message they want to go for, so be it. But I think it's more so kind of an argument against the prior three movies where they relied so heavily on the tech, and I think this is them coming back and saying, no, they are competent even without it. They are able to adapt regardless of what technology or resources they have, which is kind of the basis for the whole movie, without spoiling too much.
Yeah. As far as anything else goes, I think the music is solid enough. I appreciated they do that thing where when they cut to a country, they'll do like some sort of instruments that are sort of associated with that country. So for example, when it cuts to India, we get some like sitar or whatever in the soundtrack. But I kind of appreciated it wasn't just kind of generic music. You could actually hear a few notes of the Mission Impossible theme like in there with that style of music. I thought, okay, that's a nice touch. It kind of gives it a little bit of flavor without feeling like you're just slapping something generic on there. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean, there is a certain point where I understand the shorthand of, you want to play a Indian, then you get like the sitar and all that sort of stuff. You want to play Russian, obviously there's a specific feel to that, but it almost does feel like, can we not get a little bit more creative with it? Just a tiny bit. I like that they work in the Mission Impossible theme to it, but I also kind of wish like, not all Indian music sounds that way. Not all Russian music sounds that way. I get it's a shorthand, but
I think it works in the context of a lighthearted globe-trotting movie like this, where it's just meant to be like a quick signature. Like, if they were trying to do like a serious, like, drama set in India, and it cut to India and you started hearing like generic like sitar music, you'd be like, okay, this feels hokey given the gravity of the story you're trying to tell. Whereas here it's like, okay, it's a bit of, we're jet setting, we're going around. Like if they at any point in this movie decide to do the Indiana Jones thing with the red line in the map, it would have worked. It would have fit in tonally with like what was happening in the story. So, yeah.
I would love to see the red line on these because it feels like they just teleport around the globe. It's just like, yep, we're in Budapest, and 2 hours from now we're going to be in Berlin, and 2 hours after that we're going to be in China. Like, they could just be anywhere they want.
Pretty much. I think you have to just assume that like a day or two has passed between each thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the nature of the... Not even just the series, it's just kind of a nature of the genre, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that was... oh, God, what was it? Not in the same genre, but that was Game of Thrones. In the early seasons, they would always make a thing of saying, like, it takes weeks to travel between these two locations. But when you hit the later seasons, they're just like, we need this character to be in that other location now. Don't think about it.
Yeah. Anything else spoiler free you would like to chime in with?
Not really. I will say that going into this, I thought that the big stunt was actually the holding onto the side of the airplane, but that's only because Paramount's like custom made poster for it on Paramount Plus is angled. It's him holding onto the side of the building, but it's angled in the same way that I've always seen that plane shot at.
Oh, okay.
So I went into this and I was like, all right, when are we getting the plane thing? And then they introduce, when they go to the Burj Khalifa, I'm like, oh, never mind, it's this one. Got it.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I would say is that the effects obviously largely do hold up very well. It's a very high production value movie. There is like there's one big explosion early on in Act 1 that I did think looked a bit rough.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just a case of like, oh, it was just too big and intricate that they just didn't get quite right. They could have used a few more weeks in the oven try to like perfect that. But hey, it is what it is. This is a thing where maybe it looked fine at the time, but now with like, hindsight and having just getting more used to these big effects in movies, this sticks out a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, 2011 is such a weird time as well because you had leaps and bounds being made into the special effects world. Obviously, like Avatar and stuff like that were already out, but there was still enough blockbusters that were in that good enough mindset. So this one's kind of straddling that line where some effects really do work out well, but I think that mainly is attributed to the fact of most everything they're doing is practical. So when it comes to these special effects that are really heavy on it, that's where it's standing out.
Yeah, but I mean that is a choice that like, the choice to be mostly practical is something that like is them making sure they have a good looking effects in a weird way. Like that's an active choice they've made. So I would still compliment that as opposed to like, I guess what I'm saying is that I'll disagree that this has got the attitude of that's good enough, because I don't believe for a second that Tom Cruise at any point in this movie, in the making of it, said that's good enough. I feel like he's like, no, we have to go again. I'll dive off the building from a higher height this time. Let's go one more time.
For the practical stuff, I wholeheartedly agree. But I think that, like that bigger explosion that you were talking about that seemed rough, I think that there reached a certain point where they realized we could put in 20 more days and we'd get a 5% increase in visual clarity, and they were like, that's not worth it, just ship it out.
I mean, there always weren't deadlines. I suspect it may have just been that more than it, and maybe other scenes were more important, so they got more time of the time budget, as it were. They're always racing against and crunching for these release dates, because movie studios are determined to announce release dates before the movie's even been shot, so they're always racing to it in a number of ways. That was the only thing I really wanted to mention before we got to spoilers. So I think with that said, I will say spoilers for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. You have been warned, everyone. We are now going to be in full spoiler mode. So here it goes. Sergey? Are you not Sergey? I got a chuckle at that. I don't know.
Yeah, that was kind of the first sign to me where I was like, okay, we're doing a more lighthearted thing.
Yes.
We're having fun with it. It is just going to kind of be a thing. I didn't know if that was specifically because this was the mission before the mission, the media res, where it's like, oh, let's see what they're up to in the middle of things. But yeah, it was absolutely just a comedy bit for no reason there.
Yeah, I mean, they did a whole thing here where, I mean, the actual opening scene is actually a little glimpse of the Josh Holloway stuff. But we'll just come back and talk about that later when we do the whole flashback, because it kind of all just is one big thing. If anything, I might say that perhaps we didn't need to have the little tease of that scene at the start, perhaps. But I think the reason why I think I've got a reason why they did it, which we'll talk about when we get to the full flashback. But it's a very minor reason, so I don't know if again I would argue that they didn't need it. But once it gets to like the next part though, where it really begins, is we're in a Russian prison, and it does the hero stuff where you never quite see Tom Cruise's face. You're just sort of seeing the back of his head as he's bouncing. Well, I thought it was a ball at first, but it turns out to be a rock that he's just kind of bouncing around the cell.
That's how skilled he is. This man can bounce a rock and always catch it, like, dead center.
Yeah, and even when Benji starts, like, opening cell doors into the prison and chaos starts happening, he's still just, like, he sort of looks over his shoulder for a second, then just goes back to bouncing his rock. Like, I'm just content. I'm just biding my time.
He's like, my door isn't open yet, and I haven't heard the cue, so I'm just gonna sit here until the cue happens.
Yes, and of course when he does eventually go out, like, you get like a wide shot, and he does this sort of fancy like flip over the handrail to get to the lower level. But it's not until he decides that he doesn't want to just leave, because he's got like a clear exit, right? There's this commotion's been made, right, where Benji has like, and I love how that Benji sort of mouths sorry to the guard who's getting beat up because he's opened the cell doors. But Tom Cruise has got a door that he can leave through, and he decides not to. And it's when he turns around to like go back for someone, right, whoever it may be, that's when you get your first full like, oh, here's his face, here's the hero shot, this is our star kind of thing. And yeah, they play it for comedy, where he goes up to the door, going the other direction, and he looks up at the camera, and he's like, I know you're doing this, Benji. Like, I mean, he doesn't know it's Benji, to be fair, because he's surprised when he sees Benji when he gets outside. But he knows someone is manipulating the doors in the security system.
Because the thing that gets him interested, the thing that gets him to stop bouncing his rock, is over the intercoms plays Dean Martin's "Ain't That a Kick in the Head," and I guess that's an IMF thing of like, you have until the song ends to get to the exit point, and the exit point will be made clear to you by the open doors that are in front of you. Yeah,
so, but he's deciding to go back for something, and I'm like, wait, does he feel bad about the guards? Does he want to like save them from the prisoners? Like, what's he doing? And no, it turns out he's getting back for what was his name? Bogdan.
Oh God, Bogdan. Yeah, Bogdan. That's right.
And he's this goofy kind of character who keeps calling Tom Cruise Sergey, and like he's having to like sneak him out, and he's, we get like a bit of a sequence as he's like dodging prisoners and throwing the odd punch or whatever, and they get into like the door that he was going into originally. So Tom Cruise takes him to the exit point, and then Bogdan starts freaking out, because he's like, this is a dead end. Is this the whole plan? What's going on? But of course, Paula Patton's in the sewer with the laser cutter thing, or it's like a weird drill, like explosive thing that sort of implodes a circular hole, I guess.
I took it as an ultrasonic device where like it just vibrates the concrete until it's nothing, or at least is structurally unsound.
Either way, they go out through the sewer. They go to the getaway van. He's surprised to see Benji. Just as this guy starts to question, wait, are you not a Russian, Sergey? Are you not Sergey? They knock him out, give him over to someone, and it's because he fed intel to Ethan, and Ethan knows he'll be killed for giving out intel. So he's like, no, I saved him, I got him out. He can go back to his weird, shady, gray area life that he lives, and we can go on with our missions.
So I thought, and this was just a fleeting thought, because he goes and gets Bogdan pretty quick, but my initial thought during that scene where he decides to go away from the exit was that because he's in prison, I immediately made the link of something happened to his wife.
Really?
I don't know what at this point.
You went straight there.
Yeah, I just went straight there, because I was like, there's no way that if we're, because I mean, to be fair, you spoiled a little bit for me that there is something with the wife, and I was like, as long as the wife is still in play, there's no way he's going to be sitting in a prison for God knows how long, and the wife is just not going to be a thing. So I was thinking something had to happen to the wife, and I thought he was going back into like the evidence room or like the check-in room to this prison to like go get his wedding ring or something, or like something that would have belonged to her that he wanted back. It isn't that, but I wasn't horribly far off with later things.
What's so funny about the wife stuff is I didn't remember 90% of the wife stuff. I just remembered the ending. I remembered like seeing her briefly at the very end of the movie. Okay. I did not remember like, oh, the wife is dead. She's not really dead though. But like, we're going to go off the whole movie thinking she's dead. Yes. I did not remember that at all. It was one of the few things that I just completely blanked on from memory. But yeah,
okay,
we get to that in a second. But I do like though, because they sell this idea, and again, we find out later that really it was a mission to be in the prison. But they sell this idea for most of the movie that Ethan was in a Russian prison because he killed 6 Serbian bad guys that was unsanctioned. And he was basically disavowed by MF for getting caught. So, and that's something they've told us happens if one of their agents gets caught. And he points that out here, and I like this line in the van where he says, "Hey, if they gave you a mission to break me out, things must be pretty bad out here, because they're supposed to ignore that I exist. They're supposed to just leave me behind, but clearly I'm needed for something." And part of the reason for that is because one of the other agents, played by Josh Holloway, has been killed in this other mission, which we'll get to the backstory of in a little bit. But
yes. So one thing I want to jump in with is the credits sequence, the opening title.
Oh, Light the Fuse.
the way they do it, remember back at like Mission Impossible 1, I said, I guarantee in number 8, they're going to do something with the fuse, not knowing that they consistently did. But this is the type of scene I was talking about. The scene where they actually make it a part of the story that they light this fuse that then sets off the bomb at the end of the opening credits. That's exactly what I was expecting to show up in 8.
Every single time we were watching one of these movies and we get the fuse bit at the start of the credits, I laugh a little bit more because you said in the first one they're going to do this again. Every single time it's a little bit funnier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because every single. I don't remember if they do it in all of them. I genuinely don't remember if 5, 6, and 7 start with a fuse for the opening titles. I do not know.
That's fair.
But hey, 4 out of 8, it's pretty good so far, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. In like 2 and 3, it was there, but also very like hidden and stylized. Like the fuse itself was there, but it was hidden behind all these filters and stuff. 1, I think the thing that got me the most with 1 is how it was right out of the show. Like it was the hand holding the match or lighter up to the fuse, it lit, and then you see it going. That's what I was expecting to not show up again. How just directly lifted from the show it was, and having it here where it is literally that shot starts it off. I'm like, okay, they did it again. Good on them.
Yeah. So, yeah, basically Ethan gets the mission from the payphone and finds out they have to go to the Kremlin. They've only got 4 hours to plan a Kremlin heist. And they never actually quite explain it, although they do address it, because Benji brings it up. Why aren't we wearing masks? I wish we were wearing masks. But, like, Tom Cruise is pretending to be this Russian general of some kind. But it's just him in like a fake mustache with like, you know, grey hair, and like it's just, you know, it's just him in makeup as opposed to the face mask that we've seen them use in the previous 3 films. But they do address that it's like, hey, I wish we had that, and it's just, they didn't bring that tech with them, I guess. Like Benji didn't have it in the van, so they're stuck because they only had 4 hours. I mean, it's a good enough reason.
Yeah, I feel like it's also just a time thing because they explicitly say you've got 4 hours, and I think at this point, like they're not actually that close to the Kremlin either, so they really do have to move quick here, drive over there, get it all taken care of, and they're just kind of left with what they've got.
Yeah, so we get a scene where Paula Patton is outside, sort of controlling like a balloon that's got like a tech device in it to basically help hack into the security system, right?
I like how they don't have the face mask generators, but they do happen to have a device that A, is a camera, B, can be popping a balloon manually, C, can upload files into the Kremlin's identity system.
I think the popping of the balloon's a bit specific. I think in general, though, I would say that electric hacking devices would be like a very standard thing they would need, given what they do.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, maybe I'm being too kind.
I mean, as the sequence was happening, I wasn't sitting there going, now that's a stretch. I was like, nah, that's fun. You got a balloon, you're setting it over there. Although as soon as it was taken off, because it's a red balloon, all that popped in my head was 99 Luft balloons as it's just floating, because that's literally about a nuclear war starting because of a red balloon that floats away.
That might be an intentional reference to that song.
Yeah, possible.
It wouldn't surprise me. But Tom Cruise is in disguise, Benji's with them, they're both suited up as military officers to go in. The big set piece here, because they need to get to the records room to steal basically some data, some film records that show who this bad guy is, because he's got a code name, but no one really knows who it is.
Yes.
So
his code name is Cobalt, by the way.
There you go. I totally forgot that, but that's fine. So the big set piece here, though, is that to get down this hallway that's got a guard at the end, Benji's got like a fancy like screen that they can project like an image on, so it looks like the hallway is empty. So they have to distract him with a noise. He's got like a little like sound thrower that makes it sound like there's a drip noise coming from the bathroom, and they sneak out quickly, put up their screen, and it's like just projecting what the camera's capturing going the other way down the hall, so it just looks perfect. And this is like a fun bit because they have to be very quiet and they have to like distract him for a second to move it, because I assume if you looked at it while they were moving the screen down the hall, it would be obvious there was an illusion going on, because it would be sort of mismatching and trying to like find its new sort of angle or whatever. But my favorite...
No, go ahead. Yeah.
But my favorite part of this is when things go wrong, and like Benji's face is in front of the camera, and then you get a shot of what that looks like in the hall, and the guy just happens to not be looking, but it's just like Simon Pegg's head's really big,
right?
Just like covering the entire like length of the width of the hallway. That's the fun stuff. Or later on when it's glitching and it's kind of like it's going like to the side and to the left and up and down and whatever.
So I really like the fact that they took into account, and the thing that makes it tech is they've got a camera that does like an eye tracking thing of where the guard is at in order to perfectly match the perspective of this hallway going backwards. I think that's very clever. I really like the tech. Tiny little nitpick, absolutely the dumbest thing. Say the screen is down the hallway and it's just in front of the door to the archive room. How does it trick that the archive room is there, unless it's like a 180-degree camera, in which point couldn't it see Simon Pegg and Tom Cruise at that point?
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around what you just asked me. To explain one thing that might clear this up. I don't know if it does, but let's just get this out of the way first. At a certain point, it's not doing a live feed of what's behind them. It's doing a sort of like, because it takes time, because that's the whole thing they do. Right after Simon Pegg's face is in front of it, it finishes doing its thing where it's like, okay, now it's just got a saved like loop of what's behind them, so that nothing that's happening behind the screen is affecting what's in the thing. Right. And so from his perspective, that door's always closed. So
yes, and that works for me in the aspect of once the render is completed. I'm talking about before that, though, when they're slowly just sliding it up the hallway. How does it get the stuff that is directly adjacent, directly touching the screen that's on the wall? Because the camera's pointed down the hallway, and if it was a wide enough lens, then it would catch Simon Pegg and Tom Cruise in the shot.
It just has to be a wide lens. So that's that. I mean, there's no other explanation for it. It just has to be.
Fair enough. I mean, it just seems like a tiny little thing. It really does not matter at all. You don't think about it during the scene, but when they were going into the archive room, I'm like, you just barely put it past the door. How are you going to get in there? And then they did the render thing, rendering that point moot. Yeah. But it up until that point, it still is an issue of the very far edges.
I guess it's the sort of thing where you could say maybe there is a slight defect that the guard just doesn't notice, where, oh, there should be a door there, but there's actually just more blank wall, because that's as far as the camera's detecting at that point or something. I don't know. They could have done something with that. Possible. But I think at a certain point, it's like, okay, we're making this too complex and nitty gritty, right? Where we've done enough to like show you the defects of it and like what works and what doesn't. And like you say, like when all the guards like realize there's something wrong and they're walking towards it and it doesn't know which eyes to track, it keeps sort of changing the perspective. That's like a really fun, simple way of showing how it was working from that guard's perspective. So that's it's a fun little set piece.
I had no problems with it. I enjoyed it, but that was just a tiny little like tech nitpick where I'm like, you went through the effort of explaining so much about it, but there's still this tiny little bit that doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, I think that you could probably find nitpicks like that though in anything that's in a movie like this, like that.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that with anything. I love the people who go back and try to be like, excuse me, Back to the Future doesn't make sense because how does time travel happen with just a car? It's like, all right, shut up.
I don't think I say the same thing because it's whatever. Like that's a fictional science fiction thing. Yeah. I mean, this is kind of.
This is too. Let's not be unclear here.
This is but there's like a loose basis of like, okay, you understand all the pieces that are supposed to be working together here that seem relatively plausible. That maybe NASA's got a hold of some of this shit or something.
Yeah. Specifically NASA, not the CIA or the NSA. We need to fool those aliens up in Mars.
Yeah, well, aliens are idiots, so they can be fooled. Yeah. That's straightforward. So the whole big thing that happens here, though, as they're trying to get this, the data is gone. The film reels are empty. Tom Cruise is like, what the hell's going on? And just as this is happening, someone else is doing their own heist in the Kremlin, and they start making it look like this team's frequency are behind it, because they start saying, hey, team leader, I'm waiting for your call, I've got the goods. And they're doing it on the same radio frequency that they're using to make it look like it's them that's doing this, so that when they get outside, and we get like a little scene where they're changing their outfits, and Tom Cruise like flips his jacket and all that, when he gets outside and he sees the bad guy and he's like, wait a minute, I walked past him in the hall. He looks suspicious. He's a suspect. And just as he's having that thought, rumble, and a giant explosion goes off behind him. And one of several scenes in this movie of Tom Cruise running from clouds of something or other. This is not the highlight. The dust cloud is absolutely the highlight later on, but still worth pointing out. This is the explosion that looks a little bit rough visual effects wise compared to the rest of the movie. This is the one thing that stood out as being a little shaky to me.
Yeah, obviously this is something that could not be filmed on location. This was definitely like a green screen or some sort of set, and I think it shows. But it's not something that is like ruining the experience for me. I can tell it's special effects, but I'm like, all right, I get the gist of it.
I think it may have been on location in the sense that it was like on an empty car park or something, and then like the background is completely. And the reason why I say that is just because the lighting and everything feels authentically outdoors. So I could see them having a giant green screen outside, but so that you've still got like a sort of sense of outdoorsiness to it, because it didn't feel indoors in that kind of fake. It didn't feel like a Star Wars prequel, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. That's fair.
But even
Gotta
then,
leg up on that.
You don't always even need a green screen, because I know that entire the arc sequence in John Wick 4, that was just on an empty tarmac. They shot that, and all that stuff was put in the background, and that wasn't with green screen. Like, people had to rotoscope that entire sequence to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I also wouldn't be surprised if that was a rotoscope sequence. Like, all they really need to do is get Tom Cruise running, and then airbag at some point goes off.
Yeah, pretty much. So I don't know, but either way, yeah, because this is the thing. It's not even so much a compositing problem. I think it's mainly the explosion itself. The CG itself just looks a little bit like a fake explosion, and that is what it is.
Yeah,
but
yeah. It's I hesitate to say it's a product of the times, because I feel like 2011 was a little bit ahead of this, but it's still fine. It's still very good for what it is.
This is the thing. I feel like product of the times is irrelevant once you get past like 2006, because I think from that point on it's possible. Oh, we'll say Avatar, right? 2009 Avatar, because Avatar was such a leap. Now, don't get me wrong. If you watch Way of Water, you can see the top of the line did go up between 2009 and 2022, right? It absolutely is better and more advanced. But I think at that point with Avatar, that's where a lot of movies said, we don't have to get to the top anymore. We can just settle for somewhere reasonable and just live with that. And I think ever since then, ever since about 2009, 2010, I feel like movies, it's just based on choice and budget, whether or not the effects are at a certain level or if they're just kind of okay or even bad. Because like a lot of the Marvel movies have mediocre effects.
Yeah,
because they're just churning them out and they're wanting to get them done so quickly and whatnot. And I think we're just kind of in that perpetuity now of like, we've reached like a stalemate where they only get much better than this if the people are willing to put the money and time into making them better, and only certain big movies get the chance to really do that.
I will say I would put it slightly after Avatar, because the one that sticks out to me as the line it gives a very good comparison is the comparison between Rise of the Planet of the Apes to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I think that Dawn just absolutely nails its special effects just that little bit better than Rise does. That makes it just 100% the whole way through. I bought all of it.
Oh yeah, I'm not arguing that, because we keep peaking more. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying things aren't getting better. My point is though, is I feel like ever since about then is when like
it's incremental. It's very small.
Well, no, not even. I mean, it is absolutely that. But like the point I'm making is more that just ever since about then, whether or not the movie's effects in general are going to be good doesn't really have anything to do with where we are in time technology wise. It's entirely about decisions being made and money being spent, and that's it. Like it's not like the technology of the time is now irrelevant, and it probably has been for about 15 years, because they got to a point where once you get to Avatar levels, it's like, okay, if this was the standard, if no movie ever fell below this level of visual effects, then everything, at least from that perspective, would look fantastic. But they don't, and it's because most movies can't hit the peak of what we can actually do, and that's fine. They don't need to, but anyway, this is a bit of a tangent. Kremlin exploded, and it's been made to look like IMF are behind it. And Tom Cruise wakes up in a hospital bed, handcuffed, and this Russian dude, an agent of some kind, is like, "Yeah, I'm here to like punish you," and so on and so on. Even this gets a bit of lighthearted comedy though, because when Tom Cruise picks his way out of the handcuffs, and the guy like goes over to the window and catches him just standing on like this like ledge outside, looking shit scared because he's in his bare feet. He's only wearing like trousers and nothing else. And this Russian guy's just like, this seemed like a good idea, didn't it? He's like, yeah, it did at the time. And he's like, honeycomb. And he sits there so cocky, and like Tom Cruise is starting to inch his way back to him, and then he gets an ID. He's like, wait a minute. I see this power line or whatever it is, and there's like a truck going by. I'll just use my belt. I'll just zip line down. That's fine. And I think this is where the action stuff really sticks out, is looking good. Is like, I feel the impact of him landing with almost no clothes on as he hits the top of this van and then lands on the cobbled street. It feels painful.
It does such a great job because it gives that moment where Tom Cruise kind of just goes, holy shit, I can't believe that worked. And then it cuts up to the guard, the police guy who's chasing him, and he even goes like, wow, good on the guy. Oh, right, I'm supposed to shoot him. And then like it takes him like a full 30 seconds to like get his gun because he's just so awestruck.
Yeah, the only reason why I didn't say police is because he does chase him to different countries, so it feels like he's maybe more, like higher up the food chain than that. Yeah,
I don't think they ever really give a good thing for him. They just say that he is representing the Russian interests and he is some sort of law enforcement.
Yeah, so Cruise, sneaks around, eventually gets to, steal a phone, calls someone, ends up being Wilkinson in a car with Jeremy Renner, who's his analyst, and he's like, hey, here's what's happened. We're being blamed for this, and the tensions between the US and Russia are the highest they've ever been since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Things are really bad, and I'm supposed to take you in, and you're going to have all this pinned on you because we're the scapegoat. And right at that moment, Tom Cruise is looking down at the gun thinking, oh, I need to fight my way out of this. But then Wilkinson, completely subverting the idea that the head of IMF, not that he's technically called that, but that's effectively how he's acting in the scene.
Right.
Like, he pulls like a meta twist almost, because we all expect, the head of IMF's going to be an antagonist. Whoop-de-doo. We always do that in every one of these movies. And instead...
Is this a day ending in day? Jesus.
Instead, he's like, but what if you were to grab that gun and escape? And go on the run and maybe go to where the rest of your team are. They're at this place, by the way. And my favorite part of all this is Jeremy Renner sitting there being like, wait, what? Sir? What's happening? What are you doing?
It's because he opens up the entire quote-unquote hypothetical. He opens the things like, well, if you did escape by assaulting both myself and Jeremy Renner. And he's like, I'm sorry, what? You're going to have this secret agent guy beat us up? Please no?
He's just sitting there all confuddled, doesn't know how to take any of this. And it's very clear what's happening in the scene is actually, hey, I'm giving you an off-the-books mission. Like, Ghost Protocol means that IMF is shut down. But the only way we've got a chance of stopping this guy, who, by the way, what he stole from the Kremlin was like the launch, not the codes, because that's what he's getting later, but the launch, like...
It's the football, the nuclear football that you got to carry with you.
Yeah, for the Russian nuclear weapons. Like, that's what we're trying to stop. We have to fix this. You're the only man for the job, Ethan. Your team's on board. Like, go do it. And just as he's getting this mission, and it seems like... oh man, this is like the nice leader. I'm happy that he gave Ethan this mission. Boom, they get shot and this guy dies.
You could almost say that message self-destructed after 5 seconds.
He did. That's why you don't give out missions verbally. In Mission Impossible, you will blow up right after.
Gotta record it, hand him the device, let him play it, and it will explode. Amateur hour here.
Yeah. But this is the thing, so Jeremy Renner does get like a proper intro here where it feels like, hey, we're getting like this introduction to him, and he just happens to be left alive at the end of this when the car goes into the water and Tom Cruise has to help save him, and they swim out, and it's a whole thing. And it does do a decent job of setting up that they are different types of character, because Jeremy Renner questions how Ethan got them out of that situation, because afterwards he's like, hey, you put a flare on the dead driver and drew their gunfire away, but why would they fall for that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. If I was getting shot in the water, why would I draw attention to myself by putting on a flare? And Ethan's like, they're not thinking, they're just shooting at anything that moves. I gave them a target. You're overthinking this. So it does a decent job of like saying, hey, Jeremy Renner thinks differently. He's a character. He's not just another dude, and that's something.
Yeah, Jeremy Renner, the way that he's portrayed this early on is he's very much a book learning sort of person. He's very much knowledgeable about like, psychology and stuff like that. Whereas Tom Cruise is the street smarts. He's the one who's been out in the field long enough. He knows how people think, and he's able to exploit that in whatever way he chooses.
Yeah, so we kind of get the impression at this point that Renner isn't like an agent, and he won't be able to like fight this. Like how useful is he going to be on the team? Obviously, that takes a bit of a pivot at a certain point, but that's kind of what we're led to believe at this point. So they go to the secret meeting place, which is a cache of weapons and tech on a train. And even this gets like a fun little intro where it's like, hey, there's an eye scanner, but the train's already moving, so Ethan's having to like dodge like the things that they're going past and like jump up and open the door in time. And just to go back here, because I think the story was told in the van, the backstory with the Holloway death at the start of the movie.
No, that was actually told. You mean the van after he got out of prison?
Yes.
Yeah, it was told back there. I thought you meant the van with the secretary.
No. Yeah, the van when he met Paula Patton, who explains it, because we find out Paula Patton and Josh Holloway's characters were a couple, and this was like personal for her. Which, don't get me wrong, like in the moment when it says that, I'm like, oh, this is a little just kind of cheesy or hokey. It doesn't really feel like that big of a deal. I think it still works though in the long run, because the point of it isn't so much that we're supposed to care she holds him in her arms as he's dying. It's more just that, okay, but now she has like a reason to care about things going forward. Like, she has a personal vendetta against Léa Seydoux because she's the assassin.
That's the thing, is that it very much plays into this idea of she's not there for the mission, she's more there for vengeance.
Yes.
I mean, she cares about the mission as well, but that anger that she feels towards Léa Seydoux is something that is a major component of her character as to whether or not she's going to actually help the mission or hurt the mission, because she's so focused on killing Léa Seydoux.
Which isn't, again, it's not like an amazing character backstory, right? It's a little bit, thin, but this is so much more than most of the team members got in any of the previous movies. So
it's not a matter of whether or not it's a heavy backstory, deep and intricate or stuff like that. It's how it interacts with the other characters.
Yes.
How do they bounce off of each other? And having that conflict of her willing to put the mission at risk for her own emotional state there is what really drives that interplay between the different characters.
And that's where it bears fruit, and it works, and it makes those scenes good, and it makes those scenes more intense. So it serves its purpose. Like it's not like the backstory is that great or interesting. All it really is Josh Holloway got these papers that the bad guys want. It's the launch codes, and Léa Seydoux is the assassin who kills him and takes them from him, and that's pretty much the entire thing. I mean, there's a bit of a sequence of it where he's like grabbing them and like dodging and chasing around and whatnot, but it's not that much to it. So the whole idea here is that like she is going to this hotel in Dubai, and she's going to sell these codes, the suitcase full of paper, to the bad guy who wants them for a ludicrous amount of money, and diamonds specifically.
Yes.
And that's like, okay, this is our mission. We have to go to that hotel, and we have to somehow stop the launch codes from going to the bad guy, but also figuring out where the bad guy is, because he's a ghost. We can't find him.
Now, this is the part where I felt like it got too intricate. It went into too much. What you explained it there was perfect. It is the exact situation of what happened in this movie and the level of detail that's required to understand it. But they got really in depth of saying, here's the guy, here's this other guy who's a code breaker, here's this other guy who's the muscle for the first guy, then you got Léa Seydoux, here's these 14 different pieces of tech that we managed to grab from the cache and how they're all going to be applied in different ways. And it just felt like it was trying to set up all of this so that you could focus on the stunt work, but it was a bit too much at once.
Okay. I don't think the tech and that stuff is much of a problem for me. I do agree that the way they throw around the names, like I'm supposed to remember who the hell anyone's called, is a bit more of a problem for me. But I think once you get the gist of it, though, which is, okay, there's maybe this meetup where they do a deal, right? Where they buy this, that from each other, and then they leave. And the whole plan centers on the idea that we're going to wear face masks, and eventually that goes wrong because the 3D printer that prints the mask like breaks down halfway through. But the idea is that one of them is going to pretend to be the bad guy's henchman who's there to make the deal. The idea is that the main bad guy, Cobalt, never shows up to these things by himself to keep off the grid, and so no one knows who he is. So they want him to think that he does have the nuclear code so they can follow him because they'll trace the paper. They're going to code it in like iodine or something, they said.
Some radioactive thing that'll show up on a scanner.
Right, and it's like, okay, cool, idea. So they're going to both have meetings, and someone else, Paula Patton's going to pretend to be the assassin lady so that they both think the meetings happened without a hitch, but they don't realize that they've actually interacted with different people.
Yes, and then the extra bit of tech on that, in order to make the deal go through, is that they're going to use a scanner in Jeremy Renner's contact that is hooked up to a printer that is in a suitcase that Paula Patton will have, but it will jumble all the numbers, so that way when Jeremy Renner looks at the actual launch codes, fake launch codes will be printed in this suitcase that will be provided to Cobalt's guys.
And to be fair, I think they explained this really well, and when you're actually in the scene jumping between the two meetings, it actually makes complete sense what they're doing. It makes absolutely 100% sense.
Once we're in the meetings, I absolutely get it. But it's all of the talk beforehand that makes it seem so much more complicated than it actually ends up being, that I'm like, am I understanding this properly? But even before all of that, that's the final plan. There's a hiccup in that they're unable to hack into.
This is the big set
stuff.
piece. I mean, I think the two meetings are fun. I love the tension of that. I love the idea that, okay, in one meeting, one of them's saying, I won't show you the codes till you show me diamonds. And then the other one's like, I won't give you diamonds until you show me the codes. So basically, one of them has to convince the other to show the thing first so that Benji can transport the diamonds to the other meeting so that they'll show the codes. But then they can't open the case in the other meeting until the printer inside the case has printed the duplicates, because right now it's empty. So all that stuff works fun. But before we get to any of that, we need control of the elevator so we can actually manipulate these people into going to the right places. However, the security is too good and has to be accessed, and because, I mean, Benji could hack in if he had days or something. He could do that.
Or the IMF behind him, which they don't at this point.
They're on their own. They've went rogue, as a team at least this time, but I will point out that, once again, there's a rogue element to this whole thing.
Shock.
He just says, okay, minor hitch, we'll have to access the server room from the outside. He's like, wait, what? What about vents? Nope, can't do it for this reason. What about this? Can't do it for that reason. Okay, what floor is it on? 130. And then Tom Cruise is like, 130? And he's like, and what do you mean we'll do this? And he's like, I'm on the computer. And then
Jeremy Renner's like, I'm just an analyst. Don't look at me.
I'm a helper. I don't, So, simple enough. He has to get to the room. It's like 7 floors up, 6 floors over. He just has to go up a little bit diagonally. And my favorite, and this is all comes down to execution more than anything else. And I love the shot after they take off the pane of glass and they explain the tech, which is these gloves that are electrical that'll stick them to the glass, right? And it's like when they're blue, they're fine, but when the light turns red, that means they're out of charge, and that's it. Like it won't work anymore, which they milk as well for dramatic effect. But that first shot where he walks to the open window. And the camera is sort of overhead and it spins round with him as he spins round onto the first hand on the glass. That's cinema. It's perfect shot to make you feel the height of this, because it transitions from inside the room to the sheer drop off in the height of like how like out there he is, and how it's so well done.
And again, there's no reason. And it might honestly be this, but there's no reason why they couldn't have had him be 3 feet off the ground with a green screen floor and accomplish the same effect. But they decided, no, we're going to go extra. We're going to actually be out here on this giant ass building.
It's so impressive. And you feel the height. And I was thinking, maybe it won't be as effective now, not on the big screen. And maybe this reason, that reason. I've seen it before a couple times. But those moments where one of the gloves hitches for a second and he slides, the jolt is real. You feel the jolt. You're like, oh jeez. Like you feel it in your stomach, and you're like, oh, okay, this is actually still very effective filmmaking. It's still working so well. And then when one glove just completely dies, and he's like well, I guess I'm using that rock climbing technique from 2 to like just sort of use one hand to like stick to the window and go up.
It's a good thing it hasn't been an entire decade since then. Oh, wait.
It just like it's so effective, and they milk the tension. Obviously, they see the sandstorm coming in, and he's like, Benji, what's that? He's like, oh, it's this way far out. That won't be an issue. And to be fair, he's right. It's not an issue for him climbing, but it's set up for later when things go south. But no.
I also really like how the glove that he tosses somehow still holds a charge enough that like it slaps back against the building.
Yeah, but higher up, so he finds it as he's climbing up.
Yeah, he finds it, and then it drops off again, just to really sell again in a second shot. Like, this is how high up you are, and it's falling to your death is the only option here.
It's really well done. And then of course he has to try and cut into the window, but he needs both hands to hold the little laser gun. And I'm like, how like. I feel uneasy with you not having that hand like pressed against the window right now, because you've established that that's your lifeline. And then he drops the laser gun, and he's only like cut like maybe a third of a circle, and he's like, well, I'm just gonna have to try and kick this in. And I'm like, oh, like that. And they don't actually quite do this. Obviously the glove dies as soon as he like gets inside, but I was thinking, oh, they're going to cut to like a shot of that light starting to like flicker on his hand, like he's got like a split second and no more to get in there. But cinema. Yeah, pure cinema. It's like 5 minutes of just pure cinema. I love it.
I can't remember if it was the climb up or him coming back down again, where he does just when the glove is failing, he completely loses his grip and goes like 3 stories down.
Oh, it's when
he finally grabs back on.
I think that's when he drops the laser gun. It's when he's cutting the window and his glove just dies, and he like has to like get back up. But there is like just like a free fall for like 3 floors, and then he like just slaps his hand back on, and it's really effective.
And the moment that he slaps it back on, Jeremy Renner comes over the comms. You got 25 minutes, by the way. And he's just like, yeah, not helping. Thank you.
Yeah, but that actually is really smart writing though, because them bickering in his ear like adds like the comic relief to make it not too nail biting, where you're like, okay, that's a little bit of a release every time. You're getting a little bit tense because it is actually quite, like, especially I mean, I wouldn't say I'm scared of heights. I think I'm scared of heights this high. I'm not scared of normal heights.
I'm pretty sure most people, like, I don't understand how the Burj Khalifa is successful in any way, because I can't imagine that they can convince anybody to go above floor like 50.
I don't even like the idea of being on floor 50. Honestly, if you're over 15 floors, I'm like, you know what? I don't need to be up that high. It's fine.
I'm pretty sure God like struck down a tower for trying to build this tall. That's somewhere in the Bible. Maybe we're going against his will here.
I remember a movie that came out not too long after this, I think, was The Walk, which was the movie about the tightrope walker who walked between the 2 towers of the World Trade Center, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. In that movie, it's pretty good and well done, but I remember, even like, forget the tightrope part, even just when he was on the roof and he was sort of near the edge and it was windy, I'm like, I'm uneasy right now, because if you just trip, that's it. Like, you're gone.
See, this movie and The Walk and stuff like that, I feel like is the reason IMAX was made, just to really sell those moments.
Oh yeah, I mean, IMAX sells height like nothing else. So I mean, this sequence is fantastic. And then of course it's like, okay, how does he get back down? He has to get back down quickly because the people are coming up the elevator, they're stalling them. We have to get in costume. We have to go and like do the whole like charade. So he grabs like, I thought if it's cable or something in the room, like a spool.
Yeah, it may as well just be the fire hose from Die Hard. Yeah, that's really what it is.
And he just sort of starts running down the side of the building like a maniac, and then but it's not quite far enough. And Jeremy Renner's just sort of like shouting up, "Your rope's not quite long enough there, Ethan."
Ethan just yells back, "No shit!"
So he has to do like a run to the side, and then does a big swing and releases the line to try and just aim for the window. Which he does, but although he doesn't quite get it well, because Jeremy Renner has to dive to grab him, and then Paula Patton has to dive to grab Jeremy Renner's like trousers. So they're all just sort of like dangling precariously off the edge, and they have to pull him up. And the cherry on top is Simon Pegg comes in after having like manipulated the door numbers so that all the door like shenanigans is ready, and he comes in like going, "Whoa, guys, that was really hard, but I did it." And he wants like, some adoration for pulling off a difficult task.
He's like, yeah, this is not an easy task. And then he looks around at them all panting, and everybody's like, what happened in here? What's going on?
No, I mean this is the 5-10 minutes of the movie. This is the big set piece that everything was sold on, and I think it delivers. It feels nice and tense. It's the visuals are pretty unmatched. It's hard to complain about anything here, to be honest. Yeah.
No, I mean it's my only critique is that through all of the setup, through all of the explanations they gave for all the meetings happening later on, I was still in my mind like processing that. I was still like, oh, I need to keep all of this in mind for that going on. I think that they would have been better served if they had just held off until after the stunt stuff and then went ahead and explained, here's the people we need to see in the meeting, because it doesn't apply here. Like, you don't need to know all of that intermediate stuff at that point.
They probably just waited the ticking time clock of that meeting's going to start the second you get back in. Like, you have to immediately go there, which is why he forgets to take his goggles off and then has to put them in his jacket pocket, which ends up being useful in the next scene.
Well, I will say, structure-wise, they do all that stuff, but then they manage to have a full thing where Jeremy Renner says, like, everything's gone wrong, we need to abort. Like, the mask is failing, all this other stuff's going wrong, so true. We can't do this. So they do at least still have a few moments there to talk about it and say...
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I mean, I guess the timeline is more we have to have control of the elevators, and Benji can't do that until the server stuff's happened, because I think Lea Sedot's arriving early, and that's what the final
they don't care if
is.
Lea Sedot gets into the room. They more so care about doing it before what's the name gets in there, because that's the point where they need to be waiting already. Yeah,
the henchman of the bad guy. So I mean, I guess I see what you're saying. I guess my advice to a viewer would just be, just don't worry about the details too much, because like, once you're watching this the plan play out, it'll be, and maybe that's just because I've seen enough of these movies now where I'm like, I'm not thinking about it, because I know it'll make sense in the moment. It'll make sense when they're doing it, so I'm not worried about having to remember the explanations. And I think maybe because I do, like, even from the first movie, when they start throwing around names, I'm like, I'm not going to remember any of this, so I'm just not going to bother pretending that I do, and just roll with the punches. And usually it works out all right.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it does. It absolutely does in this movie. I understood where everything was. I guess the only thing that I wasn't positive on was going into this, the henchman that shows up. Yeah. Whether or not he is actually the main bad guy. Like, I know he doesn't look like the main bad guy, but I didn't even know if the main bad guy was actually using his real face at that point. Because obviously that's a thing we could do in this series. So when he shows up here and he shakes hands, I'm like, is that the main bad guy? Is that the henchman? That's the only one that threw me a little bit. But well, it ends obviously that gets figured. Yeah, it gets figured out very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it ends up being the main bad guy who's in disguise as his henchman because he wanted to be here himself. But I don't think it was meant to be confusing in the first place. Like who it was supposed to be.
But that's just, again, trying to follow the names, because it's so many Russian names being thrown around and stuff like that. I was just unclear as to who this one actually was.
I couldn't have told you anyone's names, but I remembered what the main bad guy looked like, and I remembered that this was his henchman, because there was one scene where he goes and kidnaps this guy who ends up being relevant here, who's like someone who can check the launch codes, and it basically gives them this dilemma where they realize, oh, he's got someone to check them, he'll know it's fake, we can't give him fake codes. And there's a bit of a debate where Jeremy Renner almost throws out the tech out the window. He's like, oh no, I can't let you just hand them over real codes. And Ethan argues, but no one else can stop him. If we can track him, even if he has real codes, at least we're here to try and stop him from doing anything with them. Like, we're the last chance. If you can promise me that there's no other way he can get these codes down the line, then fine, we'll just give him fake codes and we'll abandon the whole thing and, at least stop him from having that ability. But Jeremy Renner can't promise that, so ultimately,
Yeah, he makes the good point of saying, like, for a terrorist, every failure is just a rehearsal for success. Yes. And I think that's a solid line. I think it's a good way to make this point of, we cannot allow him to realize that he's failed, because if he does that, then the whole thing's just going kaput.
Yeah. So, but obviously they do fail here to the extent that he does ultimately get away with the real codes by the end of it all. But we get obviously the scenes playing out where they're pretending to be the other people. Tom Cruise, once the mask thing fails, he's like, we're just going to have to go without them and hope that they don't know what each other look like. And they're like, That's a pretty big assumption, and there's a bit of attention, but it's like, oh, no, they fall for it. Like, they don't actually know what each other look like. Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
everyone's sitting in silence, just staring at each other until finally Lea Seydoux says, and which one of you is so-and-so? And that's when everyone's like, okay, good. Nobody knows anybody here.
Yeah, yeah. But she actually eventually does kind of notice that Jeremy Renner is like blinking at the paper a little bit weirdly, and she kind of eventually sees he's got a contact lens in, and that's when that kind of like all falls apart. And this is where Paula Patton, like once that happens, she kind of like, oh, I'm on her. I'm going to go get her. You guys deal with the other bad guys. I'm going for her. So
we also get the reveal that Jeremy Renner is apparently very well field trained.
Oh,
as
yes.
soon as the fight breaks out, he's able to handle himself, and Tom Cruise takes very strong notice of this as it's happening.
Yeah, because he sort of like immediately disarms a guy by like pulling off the top of the gun and like does some quick moves, and it's like, oh, you're very good. Like, what? You're not.
I don't think they're teaching analysts that, so I'm going to assume you're something else.
You've been telling some fibs, or at least omitting certain parts of things at the very least.
Again, as soon as that stuff happened, I'm like, okay, so when is Jeremy Renner going to take off the face and be like, it's me, John Voight?
No, I mean, maybe it's because when I saw this originally, I like didn't remember any of the previous movies, so I wasn't really thinking about that. But for me, it never really felt like they were building up to he's a bad guy or anything like that. It just felt like,
Yeah.
you know, he's got some sort of troubled past, and that actually ends up being exactly what it is. It's like, oh, I used to be a field agent, but I gave it up because traumatic backstory. Here's the backstory, you know?
Yeah. I mean, once they do the explanation, I don't think I ever felt like he was going to betray them. I felt like he was a solid member of the team, but it was just in this tiny little in-between, in this moment where he shows that he has skills that he was keeping secret for some reason. I'm like, all right, I've seen this one before. Where's the other IMF agents who are going to betray each other? We can't go another goddamn movie without an IMF agent betraying the cause.
Yeah, so the henchman has the case with the codes. He shoots his helper, the guy that could corroborate them, because he's evil, you see.
Yes, he frees the family, but he kills him because he knows too much.
So he's on his way. Ethan obviously wants to go chase after him, which he does as quickly as he can. Just to cover up the other stuff with Paula Patton in that first, she doesn't kill her. She actually maintains herself, her composure, and is able to keep her, because Ethan keeps saying, hey, she's an asset. We can use her because she knows things. Do not kill her. And she does keep her cool as best she can. She does say to Benji when she like brings her into the room, hey, you keep watch on her and pointing the gun at her, because if I watch her, I'm going to kill her. So she's like, I still might crack at any moment, but I'm having enough self-control to like hand off the baton here, right? Unfortunately,
and then Benji screws it all up.
Yeah, Benji's, you know, he's not like that well field trained, so Lea Seydoux starts fighting back. Immediately Paula Patton gets involved, and keep in mind, they're fighting next to this big window pane that's been removed up on like the 123rd floor of this building. So when it all comes down to shove and there's a bit of a standoff and Jeremy Renner comes running in, Paula Patton kicks her and she goes flying out the window, which I think
Jeremy Renner sees it and is like, no, what did you do? You didn't have to do that.
Yeah, and you could argue she didn't have the wherewithal to know she was right next to the window when she kicked her, but I mean, maybe that's just being too kind to her character or too forgiving.
Yeah, but again, I like that because it spurs on the arguments they have later on. It's this idea of, did she know, didn't she know? She argues, I was fighting in self-defense. I did what I had to do to stay alive. And Jeremy Renner's like, you had at least 15 different options there, and you chose the only one that caused her to fall a mile to the ground.
Do you know what I like about her getting kicked out the window, though, separate from the characters themselves, is just the idea that you spend so much building up tension of climbing outside this building, showing the height, that I think it would have been what's the word I'm looking for? Like a what's the polite way of saying not giving someone an orgasm? Like it would have been
oh god, yeah,
like just the idea that if we didn't see someone go out a window and fall to their death, I would have felt like you didn't give me the money shot.
It's edging. That's what it is.
Okay, right.
It's just
I would have
edging
felt
without
edged,
paying off.
right?
Yep.
So I think for the audience, we need to see someone go out the window and like just hear the scream as they fall down to their death.
Here's the thing with the editing. simultaneously with that, the moment that she's kicked out the window, Tom Cruise is already on the ground floor chasing after the bad guy. He's outside the building. I was fully expecting to see in the background, not even see the splat, but just see the body falling in the background of like, oh, there she goes.
I think the idea is that they're so high up, and it's obviously very windy at this point because the storm's about to hit them, that she probably is so high up that she wouldn't land anywhere near the building. She would be like, whoosh, like diagonally.
Well, I like the idea, the sandstorm's coming in towards the building, so I like the idea more that she's falling, but she keeps just bashing against the building every single floor, just boom, 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 boom.
We're into dark comedy slapstick at that point, though, if we do that.
Yes. So, no, I wouldn't expect them to show it at all, but could have been.
Yeah, because we get the big shot as he's chasing the henchman out of the building. They leave through an entrance that's facing away from the sandstorm, so we get this epic shot looking up at Tom Cruise running as the sandstorm envelops the building behind them, and this is like one of their big money shots of the movie as well. So
I really like the shot that follows that immediately, which is super high up camera showing them running down this just massive hallway, or massive plaza, I should say, and you just see the shadow slowly overtake them both as it blots out the sun.
Because that's the thing, they're running from the sandstorm. I mean, they're not really running they're running, chasing each other, but like they effectively are running from the sandstorm, and it's like it'd be such a movie thing for them to always stay ahead, but they don't. Like very quickly the sandstorm obviously overtakes them, so we get this sequence that then plays out that has multiple stages inside the sandstorm where Ethan realizes, oh crap, I've got goggles in my pocket, so he's like, okay, I've got like something to help me here. I can see better than anyone else.
That is some of the best setup and payoff I can recall seeing in a while, because I'm not thinking about the goggles anymore, but they do a good job of, if you are watching the movie, they specifically had him with the goggles on the outside, and when they're outside of Lea Seydoux' room, Jeremy Renner points out, hey, you've still got the goggles around your neck, and they take them off, put it off, and then when they're being searched by Lea Seydoux' men, one of the guys pulls it out of the pocket and says, I'm just going to show the audience right here, it's in his jacket pocket, so make sure you remember that, audience. And then he pulls it out here. It's very good payoff.
Yeah, really good stuff. And there's a bit of a chase. Eventually, Cruise steals a car from some guy who's like trying to like deal with these like roof that's like coming apart.
Well, the first thing that happens is he's just standing there. He pulls out the scanner for the radioactive papers, and he sees it, like finally gets a signal, and then it's very rapidly approaching him.
That's right.
And you realize, oh, he's got a car, and he gets hit over the top of the car in this middle of the sandstorm.
But they do a good job of this kind of like, we can't see anything beyond like 5 feet in front of us. It's like disorientating. Where is he? I've got a tracker, but it's got a really short range. But eventually he steals a car as well, so we get a whole sequence where he's got the tracker in the car and they're going up onto a highway, and he can see where the other guy is with the tracker, so he tries to sort of go up the other like off ramp or on ramp to like try and meet him in the middle, and like so eventually there's this big collision where he just basically causes a car crash. That's how the whole thing kind of ends. Although before he got his own car, there was a bit where he was sort of hanging on to the bad guy's car, and when he sort of like gets knocked off, and because he had his hand on his face, he realizes that he's ripped off like part of his mouth, and he's like, wait a minute. So that's telling you whoever this was wearing one of the face masks. And I kind of love that we brought up the face mask tech, but none of our heroes ever successfully uses it. It's actually a villain who has a reveal where, oh no, this was the main bad guy who was here getting this himself because he cared too much. He wanted to do it personally.
And again, the movie did not do this. This is just my own personal worries. The moment that he rips off the bottom half of the face mask and you see that it's a face mask, I'm like, okay, what IMF agent is this? Is this Holloway? Is this the guy who got shot in the beginning? Did he somehow fake his own death? Like, what's happening here? Because, I mean, we know that the face mask technology is a thing, but we haven't seen it used by anybody outside of IMF up to this point. So I just kind of assumed they had it and they got the patent on it. So I was waiting for it to turn out to be somebody's secret.
Sure, I was going to say that's not true, but I think technically it is, because the way I was thinking of it is we've seen several villains use it, but the villains that have used it were all IMF agents that went back.
Yes,
so never mind.
Exactly my point.
No, it's just because we get the final reveal, because after the car crash, he eventually sees the bad guy on the back of this truck, and like he pulls off the rest of the mask, and it's just the main bad guy. He wanted to do this personally. It was him. Yeah, it wasn't his henchman.
And it's, he gets away at this point. So Tom Cruise is like, oh, we had him in our sights. He was right there the whole time and we lost him.
Yeah.
But it's again one of those things where it's brushing against the villain. You get this collision, but they haven't quite had a full face-to-face fight yet. So we're setting that up for later still.
Yeah, so this leads to them all fighting with each other. Ethan accusing, whatever, like, be like, hey, Jeremy, what the hell? Like, because, like, here's my point, and he pulls out a gun, and, like, Jeremy Renner immediately, like, disarms him, and he's like, your instincts kicked in there. What exactly? Where did you get those instincts there, Jeremy?
I teach you that at Langley.
So he's basically like, hey, like, this team's done. We failed. Like, we lost. And he storms out, and it feels like it kind of gives us like, oh, the team might be like done here. We're breaking up, which is why it feels like kind of nice when like they all kind of like come back together in a bit for him to be like, hey, look, we can still fix this, but we have to do it together. We have to do it as a team. So they give us kind of like a team breakdown and then like a team building back up, which it works.
Yeah. Well, they have Ethan multiple points in this movie. This is finally the payoff where he's on the phone trying to set up a meeting with someone. We don't know who, but he's saying, get them to Dubai. I need them here. And so he storms off and says, I've got a meeting and we might still be able to save this. And that's where the rest of the crew's like, hey, Jeremy Renner, what's your backstory? Why are you so secretive and whatnot?
Yeah, so we get this thing where he was a field agent, and he's like telling this story, and he's taking swigs of like a drink of whiskey or whatever. He's like, okay, I was a field agent, I was assigned protection detail to a couple, and this couple were never meant to know we were there. We were just there to protect them from a distance. And we caught wind after a few days that some bad guys were coming to get them. And I wanted to warn them. I thought it was the right thing to do, to say, hey, you're in danger, be cautious or whatever. But like, orders are orders. I never did it. I followed the husband out when he went out for a run one night, and when we got back, my other men were knocked out, and the wife was gone, and a few days later, she turned up dead. Like, her body was found. And, it's this dark story, and, up until this point, you're just thinking, oh, this is like, Al from Die Hard. He's like, hey, something went bad, I blame myself, and I've just never been a field agent ever since. I couldn't pick up the gun again. But then he adds on at the end, and one of them says, hey, what happened to the husband? And he's like, oh, I never saw him again until 3 days ago when I met him in a car. It's like, oh no, he's talking about the wife from the last movie. Oh no.
You literally see Simon Pegg's face just like, what? No. What? No. And they say like, wait a minute, hold on. I've heard this story before. They got a divorce. Like, that's how it happened. And Renner's like, no. I heard that too. That's not what happened. I was there. And then the reason that Tom Cruise was in jail, the reason Ethan was in jail at the beginning was because he went out and killed 6 Serbian men that he believed were responsible for it without being told that he should.
Yes.
So that's the hit that he wasn't supposed to do.
Yeah. Honestly, like, if I have a single part of the movie where I'm just kind of like, yeah, this is just getting us to the next part, I don't really feel anything for it one way or the other, is Tom Cruise was contacting the guy from the start, the prisoner that he helped.
Bogdan.
Yeah. And it's because he knows an arms dealer, and he basically just wants to know, hey, okay, he's got the football, he's got the launch codes, but he would need a satellite to complete the whole package. You would be the sort of person, arms dealer, who would know where he might be able to do that, or what satellite he might use. And so basically it's just intel. It's like, hey, there's this defunct satellite that got sold to a billionaire, and that's what would be used. That's what you could hijack quite easily. Compared to all the actual active government satellites, this one would be a lot more, vulnerable. So it's like, okay, that gives us our next sort of direction to go in, and that's all it is. I don't really feel that much for the actual, meeting or whatever.
I mean, it also has the immediate fallout of the arms dealer then calls up the bad guy and says, hey, guess what I know?
Oh, no.
Someone's looking for you. No?
He doesn't call the bad guy.
Oh, that's right. He calls the cop. That's
he calls the Russian agent dude who's chasing Ethan.
Yeah, that's right. Because they met up in Dubai right before he went on his sandstorm chase. But he's like, I'm sorry about this. We're on the same side, but I got to go chase this guy who's got the nukes. Yeah,
so it just gives him the next mission. So Ethan gets a plane ready. How he got a private plane like that ready, I don't know if I can explain that, but whatever. He's got resources. It's fine. So he gets the rest of the team and says, look, we can still fix this. We just have to work together. Here's the plan. Let's go do it. And they're like, yeah, okay, let's do it. So we get the setup for the third act kind of like heist, if you will, which is a billionaire's big soiree, right? A big party happening, and they all going to get their own roles. And basically, they're trying to basically shut down the satellite before the bad guy can use it to launch nukes. That's effectively the mission.
Yeah, so just breaking it down by role, we got Simon Pegg, still the guy behind the computer. He's not really immediately involved. We have blanking on her name. It's Jane, but like
Paula
we've been
Patton.
calling her actress name. Paula Patton, that's it. She is going in to get the codes from the billionaire to be able to shut all this down beforehand. And then the codes and like the servers and stuff like that have to be accessed via this ridiculously circuitous turbine fan thing that can only be turned off temporarily, that Jeremy Renner has to drop into with a magnetic suit so he can float above the ground.
Which I did like how they set this up, because they're like, hey, here's this fancy magnet tech. This is a little drone with magnets on it. It'll be like, catch this suit that you'll be wearing, and it'll like, I can move you around with this magnet drone because it'll keep you floating above it. And I'm like, okay. Yes. And he's like, but like, I'm a little bit worried about this jumping that I have to do here, Simon. And he's like, I'll be fine, I'll catch you. I'd be more worried about the heat. He's like, what do you mean the heat? Well, we're turning off the big fan, and it's a server, like, it's a computer, it's going to get hot. And he's like, oh, that sounds better. Yeah, okay.
You'll basically be in an oven, and you'll just be dangling there at my whim. But don't worry, everything will be fine.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, because I didn't really think there was anything in this that tried to do like a homage to the lowering into the what room from the first movie, where you sort of lie flat and like don't touch the floor. This was kind of like that in a weird way, but with like a spin on it. But they didn't do it with Tom Cruise; they just did it with Jeremy Renner instead. But it's it's a fun enough little.
So I suppose that's a good enough place for me to inject this. Obviously, it's gone out the window, but apparently the reason that Jeremy Renner's character exists and is put into the film as the way he is that he was supposed to eventually be the person who takes over the Mission Impossible franchise if Tom Cruise wanted to bow out. So based off of this movie, I know he's in later ones, but based off of this movie, do you think he would have made a solid enough replacement for Ethan Hunt if, say, the fifth one Tom Cruise didn't want to come back for in any meaningful capacity?
I don't think, like, I think it'd have felt weird if we went to the fifth one and all of a sudden Tom Cruise is gone and now Jeremy Renner is the lead. But I think if they'd been in a few movies together and then Tom Cruise was done and then it was like, oh, we're going to shift to like, okay, now it's going to be Renner with Simon Pegg and a couple other team members. I think the transition would have felt fine had it went that way. I don't think it would have felt right if it was just all of a sudden he's the star and no one else is back next time. That'd have felt weird. And they tried to do that with him. Yeah, they
definitely would need someone.
Yeah. And I think they kind of did that with him with Bourne. Not that it was teased in the previous one. It was kind of like a sudden thing. But that didn't work. It felt kind of weird. I think if you establish that it's more about the team rather than just Tom Cruise, and then you can take out Tom Cruise and then he can sort of fill that lead role more, I think that could have worked. Obviously, Tom Cruise clung to this franchise with every bit of strength he had, so that never came to fruition. But there you go.
It's like the equivalent of like trying to replace like James Bond, and then just like Sean Connery or whoever just holds on to it for 2 more decades. It's like, nope, I'm staying. You can't kick me out.
I think what happened is that like Tom Cruise had so much fun doing the big stunts in this one and realized that he wanted to keep doing this until he physically was told he just can't anymore.
Yeah.
And it also made a lot of money, so that gave him the financial incentive to go along with. So there you go.
If this one bombed and they started releasing these as more of like every 2 years we just throw one out just to make a bit of money back, I could see Jeremy Renner hopping on. But the fact that this is a tent pole for the studio means that they got to be shelling out the Tom Cruise identity.
Yeah, it wasn't until the 7th one that it started to underperform. But they're kind of
already... And honestly, I'll attribute a lot of that to COVID and stuff like that, where movie theaters just kind of took a major hit in general.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of past that era, but it was more the idea that the impact of that period just kind of lowered the type of attendance you got in general. So it just wasn't enough to get people to go out again. And then you've also got the idea it's the 7th one, you know, like its interest will wane eventually, you know?
I will fully say, like, as much of an interest I had in the Mission Impossible series as it was coming out, because I didn't watch those original ones, I felt like I couldn't go into number 7. Like, it didn't feel approachable. So that is a major thing of when you get into a high enough number of entries.
That is fair, although I think now that you've watched 4, I think you could have watched any of these on their own without the previous ones, and
oh yeah,
it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, I would never do that because I'm anal about like wanting to see them in the order and having that experience, as little as connective tissue as there may be. But yeah.
I think you could have skipped 1 and 2. I think 3 is still necessary for the wife plot in this one.
Yeah, to an extent, it's such a small part overall, but yeah, it would benefit.
But like, if I came into this movie not knowing anything about the first 3 and found out about this dead wife plot that it turns out she actually lied, I'd feel like I was missing something major. I feel like that's a major character beat that I was not clued into. What's
funny though is that I feel like, having seen the previous ones, it feels like a small nugget in this one, relatively.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is for sure.
Anyway, so yeah, they're doing this big heist. One of the big parts of the drama here. So you've got the comedy of Jeremy Renner being scared to jump, and that's fine and amusing, right? And again, that's the sort of thing where the actual jump does feel a bit ludicrous in terms of like the visuals of like this big fan room.
There's literally a spike on the fan. Yes, it's ludicrous.
But it kind of works at that point because you just like the characters enough. You're kind of just enjoying like him being scared and the others like telling him to do it. And then the other part of it, the main part of it, is Paula Patton trying to seduce this Indian billionaire. That's her role, and she's a bit nervous about it. She's not like, do I still have my mojo? I've been feeling a bit conflicted ever since the death of her I don't know if they were married or what, but like, her
partner.
And so it's like, okay, she's going to try, and she does all right at first. She's got this fancy green dress on. She does this thing where she sort of walks past them and like eats a strawberry or whatever it is seductively and gives them a look.
Yeah.
And that seems to work. But then she kind of flubs a little bit by when she's listening to what is happening with Jeremy Renner. She kind of like crushes the guy's hand like without thinking about it, and he's like he sort of leaves. But Tom Cruise kind of like calls a hunch and goes, I think he might like being, or not like, but like I think he'll get jealous if he sees me trying to hit on you. So Tom Cruise comes over, and even though he doesn't technically have a love interest in this movie, we have to give him a kissing scene just to fulfill the quota of Tom Cruise kissing an attractive woman.
That's a contractual obligation. That is somewhere buried deep.
I know. Was the Katie Holmes marriage a thing at this point? Did that ended already? I don't remember when the timeline of that worked out.
Yeah, give me a minute. Tom Cruise marriages. There's been a few.
Oh, there has been a few. Nicole Kidman and Katie Holmes been the two that stick out in my mind.
Yep. Katie Holmes ended in 2012, so they were probably on the outs at this point.
So he might have been having some trouble at home. Like, Katie Holmes is like starting to question the Scientology a little bit. And he's like getting upset about it.
He's like, no, I'll prove it. I'll go climb the Burj Khalifa.
I just remember
only Xenu could let me do that.
I just remember a running joke at the time when they were married that if you went to their house for dinner, like Katie Holmes would be writing "Help me" in the soup or something, like to try and like just tell people that she's in trouble.
I don't know much about the Katie Holmes stuff, but I've seen the images online of Nicole Kidman exiting their divorce after it was finalized, and she just looks like she just won the lottery. Like she's like, yes, I've done it. I'm free.
Yeah. So anyway, right, so she basically it kind of becomes this almost joke as well with her side of the plot. The billionaire's like getting kind of excited by how like tough she is because she keeps like getting like moving his hand by doing like a little spin move and like grabbing it tightly or whatever, and
yeah, she like nearly sprains it, like nearly breaks it, but then as a helper comes in, like a waiter, she transitions into like a slow pet or something like that.
And she slaps him at one point, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I think I'm into this. I think I like the idea of being dominated a touch." But at a certain point, like they have to be like, "Hey, we need those numbers now, Paula." So she just kind of has to give it a chokehold and do it. But as this is all happening, though, the bad guy is taking over a like small TV station, which has got the capabilities of like going to a satellite uplink. So they're actually already moving, and they're doing stuff to like lock out the satellites like controls so that they can't be tampered with. Long story short, they launch a nuke. All right, it's like crap. We've failed. The bad guy has actually gotten a Russian submarine to launch a nuke, and Turns out that they do it the same way that all the Americans do it in the movies. They turn two keys at the same time, and all those shenanigans.
Ain't broke, don't fix it. To be fair, I'm pretty sure that the entire nuclear arsenal has not had its system updated since the Cuban Missile Crisis, that sort of time period. They don't want to try to get that too technologically linked in. They want people who are directly related to it that have to turn keys to do it.
Yeah, you don't want people to just hack into it and just do stuff.
They watch Terminator 1, 2, and 3.
But the Cuban Missile Crisis was happening?
No. I'm saying, as anybody who comes up to them saying, maybe we should hook this up to a computer, they're like, go watch that movie.
Yeah,
go watch it now.
Fair point. So it becomes this kind of race to try and get to the bad guy, because the only way, because they have this moment of defeat of oh no, we're too late, what can we do? And then Tom Cruise sort of snaps out of it, because they're all in cars by this point, racing to the TV station. They're like, you know what? We can still stop this. Can we abort? And it's like, well, yeah, if we get the football, away from him, we can abort with that. It's like, okay, I'm getting after him. You guys get the satellite controls back to the TV station. So they all have something to do for the final set pieces, where they go in, Paula Patton gets shot, and they have a bit of a fight as Simon Pegg's trying to get the computer stuff working again. Jeremy Renner has to try and get the power back on. So they're all doing stuff as Tom Cruise is chasing the main bad guy, and the big final part takes place in a car showroom, a multi-level car showroom thing.
Well, it's a garage. It's a garage, but it's a super fancy one where you just drive your car into a parking spot, and then lifts and hydraulics and stuff put it up in an upper level. Okay. And it's very show-offy. Yeah, I thought it was like a car dealership showroom that was really fancy that moved them around. But yeah, if it's just a parking. Yeah, it's just a garage. Okay. Yeah. Hey, India's got some fancy tech. All right, they're showing things off. But absolutely. I look. We'll get to the stunt in a moment, but I guarantee you there was a bidding war for what car was going to be used in that final stunt to show its safety rating. Oh yeah, because he's trying to race against time to get this thing back, and the bad guy is just determined to not have them stop it. So he's just kicking the case away, and they're jumping each other over between cars and stuff. And then basically towards the end, when the bad guy thinks, oh, I've got no other choice, he's so committed to starting this nuclear war that he just holds the case and says bon voyage, and throws himself off the platform they're on, and he hits the ground hard. So he's basically just killed himself to make sure these nukes still go off. And Tom Cruise how do I get down there to the suitcase quickly? And he jumps in a car, and he's like, well, I hope the airbags in this are good. And just drives off and plummets to the ground. And again, it's a BMW. So I'm pretty sure BMW paid some good money to say, yes, our airbags will help you fall from 100 feet and you'll still survive. Joe, I was going to say, maybe they wouldn't like the destruction part of it, but then I thought, you're right. This is good marketing for hey, our cars are safe. He did this and survived. So absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, that's a fair point. And he does a whole thing where he opens the suitcase and he's pressing the button, but Benji and that haven't quite Renner's fighting to get the power switch on back at the TV station to get the satellite uplink going, and he's like, all right, mission accomplished, and he hits the button. Nothing. He just keeps on. You see the timer still going down. It's 30 seconds, 20 seconds. He's just smacking the button over and over again. You actually see the guy who, by all rights, should be dead. He's actually awake enough to look over and see him. Yeah. Just smashing the red button. Don't get me wrong. He is not moving much. He's his eyes are just kind of barely aware, but he is just alive to see this play out. And we've seen the missile launch. It's flying towards, I think they said San Francisco later on. Yep. Yeah. San Francisco, yeah. So you see it almost at the city, and it's the final 2 seconds or whatever when it finally works to disarm it, and it just kind of shuts up, and it hits off the edge of a building and just goes out of the water nothing. Because the one little scene we get of Ving Rhames later for his little cameo at the end, when he's chilling with Ethan, he complains that he was part of the job of retrieving the missile, so he's spent 3 days in the water thanks to these assholes. Yeah. I like Ving Rhames in this role. He doesn't overplay it too much, and he's just same old shit, different day. Yeah.
Flips Ethan off, and Ethan's like, they're chatting with the others. They're in Seattle, though, for this meeting. They're not in San Francisco.
We also did get a final bit just after he pressed the red button where the Russian cop guy shows up, and he's like, oh, you pressed abort. I guess we are on the same side.
Yeah.
Whoops.
But it's got a little bit of character, this scene, just because like Tom Cruise is in too much pain from the car crash to say anything. So he just kind of nods and shakes his head at everything the guy says to like, hospital?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Hospital.
Yes.
I need help. I'm like 50 years old. I need help.
It's not going to get better.
Yeah. So, and this is one of the reasons why when the fifth one came out, I was a little annoyed that Paula Patton wasn't back, because I felt at the ending of this really set up, no, this is our team now. Like, this is the team, because the movie ends with Ethan being like, hey, here's a phone for each of you. You're my team now, because we've bonded, we've done a good job. And everything failed. All the technology failed at every step of the way. But the one thing that went right on this mission was us. It was the people.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was so excited for a fifth one, because I'm like, oh, we're going to get the team back. And one of them just wasn't there. And it was like, I'm sure like the actress had her reasons or whatever, and it may not have been like a big deal. But it just kind of felt like, oh, what? You got me attached to like this team. So
yeah,
give me this team. You can add people to it. I'm not mad if you're going to add more people, but, you know.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, you saying that Paula Patton's not in the next one, I didn't know that offhandedly. But yeah, that's disappointing, because as much as, again, her character didn't have a lot of depth to it here, they set up the dynamics so well that it feels like a disappointment that part of that is going to have to be reset up in the next one. And I'm just going to say this up front. The fact that every single film has now had this rotating cast of female leads is a little bit like, it kind of feels exploitative in a way.
It sticks out a little bit. I will say that there is at least a female lead that does stick around for more than one movie after this, which is good. But there's some asterisks there as well, which, you know, we'll talk about by the time we've talked, you know, we've done all the movies. But okay. I do think that's a fair critique to point out, is that the attractive woman in each movie is just there for the one movie, like a Bond girl, just to be replaced next time. Even if, you know, don't get me wrong, I do think the third movie did treat it more like an emotional character as opposed to just, here's the sexy femme fatale type character kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I do agree with the critique that it does feel like they're kind of, it makes them feel like they're more rotatable in a weird way. That feels like cynicism to me from Hollywood.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at Paula Patton's Wikipedia article. I don't see any conflicts in terms of filming, though apparently in 2014, which would have been a year before the next one would come out, she was going through a separation and a divorce. So maybe it was just personal things that got in the way of scheduling more so than them not bringing her back. But
that's the thing.
It does just feels a bit weird.
The reasoning for her specifically not coming back might be completely innocent and might be completely fine, but it does feel like a weird trend. And that said, though, I think a lot of the other characters felt a little like interchangeable as well up until this point. But but that's why this team sticks out. It's because the dynamics have finally been feeling like it's solidified, and I'm upset that we haven't managed to continue that. Yeah, but the good news is that Pegg is back, Renner's back. I think Ving Rhames is back more so. He's not just a cameo in the next one, so that's nice.
Fair enough. And then I guess we should get the final thing in this movie where
Renner doesn't want to accept being like a permanent member of the team. Like the R2 do, he doesn't, and like this is where Ethan is like, hey, like I don't even remember what he says, but like it gets to the whole like backstory of like Renner's character.
He basically says, hey, like I know about you, or how do you know my wife was dead? How are you sure about that? And he's like, she was dead. I saw her there. And it's just like, did you ever like see the body? And then we get a shot across the harbor at this restaurant where they're sitting at, showing Michelle Monaghan walking down the street with some other dude.
Just a coworker.
And it turns out that just a coworker. And it turns out that all of the killing the Serbians and everything like that was all just a ploy to get him into the prison to be able to find out more info about one of Cobalt's guys. So it was all just a play.
He agreed to this horrible mission only if they like agreed that the wife would be considered dead and to protect her because like she's always going to be in danger if she's near me, which makes me think, okay, so the retirement just wasn't an option then. You weren't willing to give up this life to just be married. I guess that's the one part of just backdating to the last movie that feels like, okay, I guess we're just removing that part of it away. But at the very least, it does kind of present it where there doesn't seem to be hard feelings, because the movie kind of ends with them like waving at each other like, hey, we still love each other, but, you know.
It can't be. We're just going to... We didn't divorce. It was a happy ending, but it had to, unfortunately, go the other way.
To be fair, this movie did show Ethan being the one man who could lead a team to stop nuclear war. So... his job is pretty important, I have to say. It's not like he's just like doing something that someone else can do.
I like the alternative explanation where he did retire for like a year and a half, but he had to know what the rabbit's foot was. And so he went back to Lawrence Fishburne and said, I'm in, for the love of God, tell me what it was.
Yeah, talk about interchangeable. Like, the person in charge has been different every single movie.
They have. I honestly, like, they don't really say it at the end of this one. I assume that IMF gets back up and running because they cleared the name of...
I assume so, yeah.
Like, the group. But if IMF were to stay down and it was just kind of, this team is now going about, like, doing different things... I guess IMF has to be up because he gets a new mission right at the very end of this movie. He gets a call on his cell phone. But if IMF were to stay down, I would almost feel better about that, just so I don't have to think about the fact of the changing leadership and the background of it, where it doesn't feel like it's an actual organization. It feels more like whatever it needs to be at that moment.
Yeah, even this one, it doesn't really feel it was an organization that's operating with an office, right? It doesn't feel like that here, because it just focuses on the team out in the field. And I feel like, I remember there being like scenes at headquarters again in future movies. I could be wrong, because I've only seen them the once, but I don't remember that being like a big part. Like, 3 sticks out in my mind as being the one where there's like a, there's like an office where the home base is. I don't think any of the other movies have that. So, yeah, we'll see.
I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, the movie just kind of ends. Like, I mean, the real final scene's like Jeremy Renner being told, hey, you don't have to feel guilty. You didn't let anyone die. So he picks up the phone, fine. He waves at his wife, and there's the final moment. It's like him walking into the mist as he gets a call, and it's like, hey, the mission goes on.
Yes, I was actually fully impressed that he waved at the wife. I thought it was going to do that thing where she thinks she sees something, she looks over, he's disappeared into the crowd. Yeah. But no, they share a look, and she's like, hey, how's it going?
Do you know what I'll say? I don't really hold the third one in that high a regard, as much as I think it is much better than 2. But I do appreciate that the one thing I did kind of like is that he, didn't really want to lie to her, and even before she did find out everything, he was kind of alluding to, there's stuff I can't tell you, but I want to let you in on that. To me, him not just disappearing into the crowd and her not being sure if she saw him, and him staying around to actually give the wave, was like his way of like continuing that, of being like, no, you get to know I'm here. I'm not going to be like a complete ghost. Like, you get to know I'm here because I want you to know I'm here. I want you to be on equal footing here and understand that I'm around. So, I don't know. To me, that felt like a way of upholding that from the last movie.
Yeah, it feels like just not throwing it away. Because, again, that's the thing between 2 and 3, is they set up this passionate romance with Thandie Newton, and then she just disappears, and it just feels like not a betrayal of that character, but just like, okay, we don't care about that anymore.
Yeah.
This feels like it gives a bit of continuity where they show how much he loves her, and instead of it just being something of, oh, we got divorced, or, oh, I can't see her anymore, whatever, it's, no, we know that she knows about this whole secret life. I have no reason to hide from her, but I can't make contact because that puts her at risk. And so we just have this little moment here, and it's doing the previous film justice without having to be beholden to its continuity. They're allowed to do their own thing, but they don't just throw it away out of spite.
Yeah. And I don't think we're going to see her again from memory, and I think this works well enough as like a little goodbye to her without feeling like it's a complete, slap in the face.
Yeah, it explains she's gone, but it opens it up of saying, now if there is any other romantic interest, it's not totally off the table, but he does still hold a place in his heart for her.
Yeah. And not to say that there won't be times in the future where there is things that feel like a bit of a slap in the face, because I do think there is, but That's something we'll discover when we get to those moments. I won't even allude to what I'm talking about or where it comes.
I have no idea what you're talking about, so unless all of a sudden Simon Pegg turns into Nick Frost, I'm not gonna.
Hey, that'd be a funny swerve in one of the movies.
Yeah.
Hey, Simon Pegg's got an old friend who's going to come and help in this mission. Oh, it's Nick Frost. That's weird. All of a sudden, it's a Hot Fuzz style situation happening.
Yeah.
All right. David, what was your scene of the movie?
Oh, this one's actually pretty hard. I think there are some standout moments, but it's very hard to pick between them. It's especially if you're going for small enough as like an individual aspect or a scene. I think there are long sequences that are very good. If I had to pick my favorite moment, I think it's going to be the sandstorm chase. Okay. I think that is a just cinematography wise, it is so unique, and it gives this extra tension of we don't know where we are, we don't know where we're going, anything could pop out at any point, but it keeps this high tension and high action atmosphere going through it, and it just visually looks stunning as well. So I'm going to say that. Yeah,
I mean, it's almost boring to say just the climbing the building, but it is like I think that's what was impressive to me. It's not the sole impressive thing, because the characters and the team feeling a bit more well defined and like kind of rooting for them as a team was definitely a big part of why I like this movie. But that set piece, I remember just going into this movie with very little expectations, because I wasn't that big a fan of the previous ones. I thought 2 was terrible, 3 was okay from what I remembered, and 1 was okay from what I remembered, but I wasn't in love with the franchise. And just like sitting there watching that sequence of him dangling off the building and just being like, oh wow, like I feel like this is spectacle in a way that other movies aren't giving me, because it's not, because this was right in this is the same year as the third Transformers movie, to put it in perspective. This isn't big CG things fighting with lots of quick cuts. This is good captured cinematography of an impressive stunt set piece, and it felt in a weird way very old school, just in terms of like what it was doing. Even though it's on a big scale that feels very modern, it just felt old school in the techniques and like what was making it impressive, and it was hard not to love that. So I gotta go with the building climbing, but there's a lot of good scenes in this movie to pick from. So that's that.
I pulled up blockbusters from 2011. The third Transformers movie, Green Lantern, The Adjustment Bureau, Battle Los Angeles.
Oh, dear.
Not a good selection here.
For blockbusters, no. A lot of good movies in 2011, but not in the blockbuster camp.
Nope.
All right, what was your MVP of the movie?
Again, it's got the team dynamics down, so it's actually not a super easy pick.
It's tough, because I think you could make an argument for like at least 4 of them, if not maybe even.
I would say that the 4. As much as, I think I gave it to Philip Seymour Hoffman last time. If not, he was very close to getting it. I don't think the villains are really up for it in this one, because, again, the villains aren't as interesting as what their plan is. I'd say it's got to be one of the main crew. I think Paula Patton's probably out. Not because she didn't do a good job, but, again, it's just this idea of her character is not a very in-depth one. And for similar reasons, same goes for Simon Pegg. As much as I like him as a comedic relief, he is still just comedic relief for the most part. So it does come down to Jeremy Renner and Tom Cruise. And I almost want to say Jeremy Renner, if only because I think that Tom Cruise, the character of Ethan Hunt in this movie, feels kind of static. It doesn't feel like he's growing that much. He opens and closes the movie more or less in the same spot, where I feel like Renner, he's introduced as this analyst character. We find out that there's more to him, and he manages to play the whole gambit of he's got comedic relief moments, he's got some more serious moments, he shows that he's able to perform on each of those aspects. So I think I'm going to give it to him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think him and Paula Patton's characters are the ones that maybe have more of a change or an arc, because they've got something they're going through and getting over in some capacity. Because Ethan Hunt, it turns out, isn't going through like the rage that he had from the death of his wife and the vengeance that he took, because it turns out that was a fake. And in reality, he ends up being the one who's able to let someone else off the hook. and that is kind of an interesting dynamic. It's kind of like not even a twist per se, it more just like a subversion of how you would write this normally, and I think that's interesting. To like have him be the person who can give the closure to someone else. So I'm also tempted to say Jeremy Renner, just because I think we already had Simon Pegg, and I do think he's better in this than the last movie. But I think Renner adds more to the team dynamic out of anyone, just in the way that he kind of conflicts a little bit. It feels like he's got moments of humor, like you said, but also moments of like, you know, actual good action scenes and things like that. And I don't know, like he also works well as being the character who's like a bit of a conduit for the audience, because he's like, wait, we're going to do what? Like he's the one that needs a bit more of an explanation sometimes. So, but to be honest, I don't think there's a great divide amongst the four. You could probably rank them, but I don't think there's a huge gap between the one at the top and the one at the bottom of the four. So, credit where credit's due. Yeah. All right. All right, visuals. Let's rapid fire this a little bit. Go on.
All right, rapid fire visuals. I think it had some great moments of cinematography. Like you said, moving outside the building was great. The whole sandstorm scene, fantastic. I think that was filmed in IMAX, or at least was displayed in it. So, yeah, I think visuals very good. I'm gonna say 8.5. I think it's up there.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, the only thing I would say is that it doesn't have like a super distinct visual flair where you go, oh, this looks like this movie, but its handling of those big sequences is so good, and it adds to the feeling of being up high on the building, or being confused and like disorientated because of the sandstorm, or whatever it may be, or even the way the car goes down in that final set piece. Like all those things are handled so well. It's edited pretty slickly, that I also find it hard to go below the 8, certainly. I think 8.5 sounds about right. The only thing that I think it would put it above higher is like a more distinct, super like visual style of some kind, like a motif or something that would make it feel... But as it is, excellent. So, audio.
Yeah. Nothing really stood out that much. I did like how they worked in the Mission Impossible theme into different elements. Added a little flair to it, but it's not like it had a really standout audio score for me. And again, I don't pick up on as much as like the surround mix as you do. You've got a better setup for that. So I'll say for me, it was probably just a pretty standard 7.0. Like it didn't do anything stand out for me.
Yeah, that's fair. I think there's the sound mix is pretty good. Like I definitely was having some fun moments. Again, the sound adds a lot to that building climbing sequence. The way it's just the wind blowing, and you hear that around you as it's happening. I think for me this has to be another kind of in the great territory. I think the technical qualities of this one are quite high, so I'm going to go 8 out of 10 on the sound. Acting.
I don't think anyone really delivered a bad performance. I'd say, yeah, no, I have nothing really bad to say, and everything I've said in the review is kind of what I feel about the characters. So it's very well done throughout. Everybody played their parts well. I'd say I don't think there's any performance that like was reaching for the Oscar. I don't think there's anybody who really brought like AAA game, but they did all bring their normal A game. So I'd say I put it at a 7.5.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about a 7. Just because I think everyone does a good job. I don't think like the type of movie demands, something super like high up their caliber, but I think they're all entertaining and make the roles likable to varying degrees, and that's all I really kind of needed from it. So, no, I think they fit things well, but I don't think there's anything in the movie that demands like amazing performances, or that anything works because there's like a standout amazing performance. So it's good. 7 out of 10. Okay, yeah, happy with that. Script/story.
Again, it's a weird balance, because all of these stunts and action scenes they picked and they wrote because that's what really works, but that is a lot more about the spectacle than it is the story itself. Each of the characters is not too deep within their own right. Obviously, you get a bit more depth with like Jeremy Renner, but for the most part, you're here for the spectacle. The story, it's pretty lightweight, and I do have issues with the way the script is elaborating a bit too in depth, where I don't think it needs to, all the names being thrown out. So I feel like if we're looking at the category as a whole, it's a little bit weaker than maybe the sum of its parts, but I'm going to say it still just squeaks into the 7 territory for me.
Yeah, no, I was going to say 7 for this as well. I think it basically is good in the sense that it knows not to waste too much time before the next set piece. And I think when the set pieces are happening, and admittedly some of this is on how the choices were made in editing and things like that as well after the fact, but once things are happening, it does flow very well. And the main bad guy's goal is nice and simple and blunt. He wants to launch a nuke. We have to stop it. So it keeps things simple to an extent, even though it does convolute it a little bit with the explanation sometimes. But I think it's head and shoulders the best script of the series so far. So I'm going to have it a 7 as well. It's good and gets the job done. So production value.
Yeah, I mean, this one, they film on all these locations, actually climbing on the Burj Khalifa. Clearly, that's got to count for something. It does a great job throughout. So I think, without going too deep into it, I think that I'm going to say 8.5.
Yeah, I think this is a 9 if there ever was. If not even 9.5. It's... Ooh. I mean, I don't know how much higher you can go with production value for this type of movie. Like, it gives you all of the spectacle you could possibly want in really authentic ways. One dodgy moment of visual effects notwithstanding, it's like pretty high up there, again, for all the various things you would put in a movie like this. So
I think what brings it down... Sorry.
How do you go? No, you give your...
Yeah, I feel like what brings it down a little bit for me is while they do shoot on location for a bunch of those stuff, it does feel like there are several scenes that are explicitly just built sets. And while they are fine sets, it did feel that way to me. It felt like, okay, we've like the Kremlin scene, you've got the external shots of that, and whether or not they were actually at the Kremlin doesn't really matter. It looks like it was, and it did a good job of that. But so much of that was filmed on these internal sets that it kind of feels like a little bit lesser in those moments. So that's, again, still 8.5. They're still great, but like it's just tiny little things like that pull it just below the 9 for me.
Yeah, I don't know if they need it anymore, but like I'll say 9 because I think this is just, as far as production value goes, this is one of the highest ratings I've given so far, because I just
for sure.
I just don't think there's much feeling like it's holding its back. Now I don't know what do I give a 10 to production value. The first thing that pops into my head is Alien, because the sets and the design of everything and all that, but maybe that's the thing. Maybe a movie set in the regular world just can't get a 10 because too much of it has to just be the normal world, as weird as that sounds. But regardless, 9 out of 10. All right, what is your final score for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol?
Like I was saying during the script, I think that this movie ends up being more than the sum of its parts. I did really enjoy it. I really like the team dynamic of it. So all in all, I think I'm probably going to get this up to an 8.5. I think that this is a really solid made one, and I look forward. I think that if this is the shape, the template that we are using from this point on, I'm more than happy with that. I think that that's a fantastic way to continue on the franchise.
Yeah, I agree with the 8.5. I think this is a great movie. And the only thing that would put it above for me, and I like the team dynamic, I like caring about them a little bit more. If you made the story just that bit like more good in terms of like, it's not just serviceable to get all the good set pieces and whatnot. If you actually gave me a story that I at its core really cared about and was emotionally invested in, that would put it into amazing, like, best action movie of all time status. As it is, it's great because it doesn't waste too much time getting to the good stuff. There's good team dynamics. There's the lighthearted stuff to make it not feel like it's taking itself too seriously. So yeah, 8.5. I concur with that number.
And then in terms of making the cut, I think it's pretty obvious where we're at.
Oh, it definitely makes the cut for sure.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't say it's quite a cut above. It's like it's kind of like as close as maybe you can get without being in consideration for it, but I don't think it quite gets there.
Yeah, I would say so. I think what we've said about how lightweight the story and script is, that's what puts it underneath that level. If, like you said, if it was a story that had something really special to it that we could really sink our teeth into, that would be what would put it over that line.
No, for sure. So yeah, there you go. That is Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. We'll be back with Rogue Nation next week. And I'll just take this time to say, if you enjoy the show, you want more, obviously check out the Sci-Fi Movie Podcast. It's the same two people. The Atomic Cinema Experiment, check out that. Obviously also available on the YouTube channel or on its own podcast feed. But you can support everything and keep all of that coming by going to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and supporting us for as little as $5 a month and getting access to bonus monthly shows like the Criterion Cut, where we review the movies from the Criterion Collection, or Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst things ever made. You can also access some of this stuff and support us via YouTube membership if that's more your thing, for whatever reason. Any support from anywhere is greatly appreciated, and thank you very much for joining us. But that is the show, so thank you once again. We'll see you next time. Keep watching movies, and Ethan apparently has this to infinity, but if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.